is 9:03 or 9:02, depending on where you're looking, and we will begin this work session of Lake County Board of County Commissioners. Thanks everyone, welcome.
So good morning. When we did the budget presentation about 2 weeks ago, looking at pretty close to closing out Q4, we kind of talked about the pattern that we have set up for y'all this year, which is doing budget and then doing an update on the priorities and actions that y'all have kind of outlined and set up for us staff to accomplish. So we are the first group, the administration group. We're going to talk a little bit about where we came from and then what y'all can look forward to throughout this year and the coming years.
Okay, this is the 9 a.m., 10 a.m. project group update. Agenda item number 1. Okay.
So once upon a time, there was a county manager named Tim Bergman, and he thought it would be a really good idea to bring the leaders across the county together in kind of just a friendly fashion and not too heavy with ideas or plans to talk about what was going on with the county. We named it County Leadership Team, which is a really missed opportunity because it could have been BLT with Bergman Leadership Team, but we all know his fault, he wasn't that clever. So when we talk about CLT, it was really a place for directors to casually connect with ideas and information, to collaborate on county strategic plans and priorities, and use it as a tool of dissemination of information, right? All this information is delivered here to all these department directors that we have in the same space and place. Now take the words back to your departments so that we all know the stuff and things. But it was 2 hours of talking. It was too big of a group. And honestly, it was too boring.
That's a big but.
Oh yeah, cause like it was pretty boring.
I had to say it.
Only one T though. So that's kind of the progeny of these project groups. We had this time reserved, we had this pattern to show up, but we knew that we needed a change to really make it a successful tool for the county and for our staff. So now looking at the present, these are the 3 different project groups that emerged thematically kind of on the type of work that we work on. So you are hearing about the administration group right now, which consists of the county attorney's office, county managers, finance, human resources and operations. Community development will be the 3rd to present today, but that's community planning and development, the library, Office of Emergency Management, Parks, Recreation and Open Space, Public Works, and Tourism and Economic Development. And then the second group that will present today is our Health and Human Services group, which is Community Justice, Human Services, Office of Emergency Management, because they're double dipping, and then our Public Health. Sorry, I'm late.
So good.
I missed my jokes.
We had quorum.
So looking back again, even though we officially didn't have these project groups formed, we were still working in the same type of content areas. So with the past commissioners, 23 and 2024 priorities were elected training. I think you all experienced that.
We loved it.
It was fantastic, and I think it's a really good start because we need to have a broad approach to elected training. I think that we need to have onboarding and support for the sheriff, for the assessor, for the clerk and recorder, the coroner, and the Board of County Commissioners. It's important to know the county, what we do, how we do it, along with that statute, so they can be successful in their position and support their teams and support their functions. We looked at manager training because it's something that we wanted to do. And I think that we are really in the midst of that right now. Last year, we did some diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice training. This year, we're really looking at manager training, supporting our directors, and our human resources team has been supporting that. We knew that we needed to reinvigorate our CLT curriculum, and that is this right now in action. So.
How big is the leadership team?
It's every single director and deputy director is invited.
Wow, okay, so it's like 30 to 45-ish
Yeah.
people, depending on.
That is correct. So when I said that it was too big of a group to really have that organic, thoughtful moment to connect with directors in a casual way, it just kind of didn't really work in that manner, because there were too many people.
So that's why we split it up into
That is one of the
categories.
reasons.
Okay.
We have been working on updating our policies. This really started as an inventory of everything that we had as a county policy, and then we have some departments that do have their own policies. Reviewing those, seeing if they're accurate and applicable, if they apply to a larger group, and what needs to be refreshed. Super excited the work that we're doing now, because Candace has brought some really good ideas, saying we have the policy, and that's our theoretical framework that doesn't change or guide, it's our procedures that change. And that was pretty revolutionary for me, and I was like, oh. So that's something that we're applying to a couple different content areas beyond the finance policies that you've seen. As you know, we've really been working on cataloging our assets, anything that's a capital of $5,000 or over and has a lifespan of over 1 year, to feed into an asset management plan. So we have better planning, better knowledge of what's needed in the future, so we don't have any surprises. And then in the last big project we worked on was reducing direct reports to the county manager. So you just noted that CLT was a huge group. All of those humans reported to the county manager. So we came up with a couple of different models looking at. He loved it. He was like, I can never accomplish anything, but I can talk to everyone. So we looked at a couple of different models from counties, how they really structured them, so 30 people weren't reporting to one human, because you can imagine how overwhelming that is.
Yeah.
And we kind of presented that to the Board of County Commissioners, and for us, the thought was really to have a deputy county manager and kind of split those roles and responsibilities across the board. So these are the projects we worked on for the past 2 years. And I think that it's really easy for you all to see that this all feeds into operational efficiency. And that was one of kind of how I created a category for some of those pieces that you identified in your winter retreat. They really had to do with administration, with structural, with efficiency. And what tied them together was that operational efficiency. So this is just kind of looking behind and letting you know where we were and how far we've come in the past 2 years, as we really start to dig into the priorities, tasks, and actions that y'all set forth through all the staff. So now that we've talked about the past, let's go to the future.
Thank you. So our team, the admin team, we have lined out just kind of our work that we want to get done each quarter, and then we've aligned it to the priorities that you guys shared with us. So our current work is administering merit and cost of living adjustments. We've had some conversations about the best way to move forward depending on where we're at fiscally when we really start to work on that 2026 budget. We've got a couple of different ideas about if we can only do one, which one is the most valuable to the county, and then how could we be able to include and encourage people to really give direct feedback to their staff. If we couldn't do a merit, we are exploring other options for how we could still incorporate something tied to improvement. And also a really big thing we talked about was having a bit more structure so that when people are getting a merit increase, it is definitively tied to actual goals with actionable steps about how to accomplish those, and also working with our department directors on how to objectively assess those things.
Mm-hmm.
So we just wanna make sure if we're doing that it really is tied to outcomes that make sense and are fair across the board and feel, like they're moving us forward in terms of growth.
Hey,
Yes,
can I
sir?
ask a question real quick, please? Administering merit and cost of living adjustments, can those refer to the same type of incentives, or how are they different, how are they like,
Okay. So merit is tied to your performance, and we do currently performance reviews twice in the year, and the second one that we do is kind of like how did you do throughout the year, and it's tied to an increase in pay based on performance. A COLA, a cost of living adjustment, is a standard percentage across the board that's applied to every employee, because the cost of living, especially in smaller communities, often outpaces what we can afford to pay.
In my head, I'm just like, aren't those both raises, like, so,
For me, I think it's really important to not frame COLA as a raise. I
Okay.
think that we tend to say, oh, I got a COLA, I got a raise, and it's like, nope, your organization cares enough that they're trying to match inflation.
Yeah,
So regardless of your performance, we just
treading water,
keep you
Yeah.
treading water.
got it, alright, let's see.
other things we've done this quarter are working on contract administration and signature delegation, which I believe you guys are going to be voting on shortly. So that would allow the county manager to sign contracts up to a certain point, and then they'd be on a future BOCC consent agenda, rather than spending so much time, especially if they're renewals of contracts. You guys would have the information beforehand, of course, to review, but just to kind of streamline and make these meetings a little less time consuming, so we can focus on other bigger priorities. Conducting legal and budgetary review of contracts. We're working on streamlining that with some of our new systems, tracking it and managing contracts centrally in Tyler. Historically, contracts live in emails, which is a great way to not remember them. And then finance has to execute those contracts when you guys say that we're going to have a partnership where somebody's gonna pay us $10,000. And so if that's not well communicated, finance isn't doing that. Because it's in someone else's email, they've never heard about it and don't know it's coming. So Tyler is our accounting system. We are actually uploading those contracts into Tyler and making sure that individuals who are responsible for billing understand that that's in the contract, and that's a big thing. I am excited as we accept contracts to let them know immediately, not just find out half a year later that we haven't billed and now we have to go recoup those dollars. So this is a huge thing for us, is this communication and tracking piece. And then collaborating with the county attorney's office on finance needs in contracts, so that when we put something in a contract, it actually makes sense from a finance and accounting perspective, that they can record what we're asking them to do in a way that makes sense. So these are all tied to the goals and priorities that you guys set. So I've kind of highlighted these here. And I'll give you just a moment to read through and see if you guys have any questions about this piece.
Are you guys happy with Tyler?
There are some pieces that needs a little love, they just need to work. And we really kind of had an absence of a finance director. Tyler's actually gonna be here tomorrow.
Oh, there's a
And,
guy named Tyler?
well, no, his name is actually Gibson Marks.
Oh,
And he will be here tomorrow to work with the finance team. He's here for an hour, and we've already pre-sent, hey, these are some of the things that are currently not working well for us.
Okay,
He's gonna discuss those with staff and then give us some feedback on the best way to mitigate some of those things.
a whole hour.
Yeah. Well, he's not gonna be the person that fixes it.
Okay.
He's gonna, what I would like to see come out of that meeting is, here are issues, who is the person to fix it?
Yeah.
And how do we get it fixed? There are some things that we don't use, like AP automation. You could scan in invoices and it makes the AP packet for you, and then you route it to the correct human to digitally approve it. That right now is a manual piece that takes us a week. And it's just, if the cost of adding AP automation is not so laborious and it works, then we should be doing those things. That frees up a whole human to be working on other tasks that we really need to be covering in the finance department.
okay, that's huge. Do you think there are other underutilized or undiscovered processes via Tyler that we are not aware of that could help other departments, like maybe the assessor's office?
I'm not sure on the assessor side, I have talked to a couple of other counties, just because I wanted to understand. And what I've heard across a lot of counties is that their software for the assessor is not great.
Okay, good, just wanted to,
I did reach out and ask other people, cause I was like, oh
Thank
gosh, we're
you.
gonna change it
That's
after we
huge.
just got here. But it does sound like it's not really made for the needs of his position.
okay. Cause yeah, if we're gonna consider making a big plunge there,
Yeah,
we need to make sure that we really do due diligence, that there's not something we're missing.
Are
For
there any-
operational efficiency
Yeah.
reasons, yes.
I think we really need to and increase our utilization of the IT pieces that we have and just get some of the things that we have really working correctly. And I do think there'll be some monetary investment to get things where they need to be, you know, in terms of we have to pay someone to come out and do training. But I think that the offset to that is then we have a system that works correctly and we're spending less money on consultants because now into perpetuity, we can actually do our jobs correctly with systems that actually work.
Correct,
Am I okay to go on?
yes, ma'am, I mean, I think so.
So Q2, where are we headed? We are working to have a centralized document retention, and performing records cleanup. The evidence room, HR, finance, we have a lot of non-digital records that we would like to work towards digitizing, and storing them, in a little bit more, intelligent of a way that we can actually find things. They don't live in the bottom of a file cabinet in someone's office. We want to support the Colorado Open Records Act and improve public accessibility. We're conducting annual policy reviews with board involvement, so we're working towards a June, kind of have the policies and some new procedures that we've kind of worked through with departments before just putting them out there. So kind of the same thing down below. Exploring paralegal and contracts administration support options. Preparing detailed memos and ensuring public postings. We really wanna make sure in a memo, if someone is coming before you guys to ask for something, that you have all of the information you need by the time they're here to make an educated decision. Not that we have to come back 3 or 4 times, which takes your time and their time. We wanna make sure we're using those memos to guide staff to answering things that would help you make your decisions. And then we are managing the go to market process for insurance in April to May to see if we can maximize the benefits we provide to employees while minimizing the cost to the county and to the employee. So we are really looking to improve our benefits offerings if we can. And then these are tied to your priorities to the right, which I'll give a second to let you look at the combo and ask questions.
And I just wanna throw in a comment about especially the records retention and the management of those records. It's becoming a huge burden to respond to court requests because of the inability sometimes to
Yeah.
find stuff. And since the governor doesn't appear ready to help us get the relief we need, if we don't have the override, net veto override go through, we're still gonna be struggling to meet the requirements of court going forward, so absolutely 100% support that, as well as finding the right resources for contract administration support. We need those resources.
I've had a couple things come up already where it was like, oh, well, they signed this lease, but now we don't have it anymore, so we're starting a new one, and then just a couple days ago, it was like, well, we have a conditional use permit that no one can seem to find,
Yeah.
but we've got it. There's evidence of it in the minutes from that meeting way back when, but no one had, I'm like, oh my god, like, how do we lose these things, so,
Yeah.
thank you for recognizing and working on that. It's probably in my filing cabinet somewhere.
You're the problem.
I inherited the problem.
Inherited.
Yeah,
Are there any other questions before I move on?
not from myself.
Okay, Q3 and Q4, We may break these out as we continue on, but I think we knew the things we wanted to tackle first. And then these are kind of second half of the year, once we're moving really into budget season. Managing multi-year funding obligations for transit, goal, wraparound, and community justice. One really big thing that I wanna continue to work on, even as we bring in a new finance director, is helping departments understand their budget to include budgeting for their grants separately from their budget so that they can be included in their budget. But we need to understand that we could cover our operations without a single grant if we needed to. And I'd love to see that we're helping departments budget for a grant, not just the next year, but for the next 5 years. So as things change, we have a plan and we can change that plan as things are developing. Like sometimes you plan to get a whole, project done and it doesn't happen in that year. Okay, what happens to our budget to move it to the next year? So kind of managing multi-year funding and being a little more forward thinking and how we plan and track those things. Planning for contingencies and economic downturns. That's really important, and the only way to really start to do that is to have accurate data for where we're at now, see where we've been in the past and what we need to do like 3 to 5 years in the future in terms of planning for those things and being fiscally responsible. Projecting sales tax revenues and other funding streams so we know what we should expect to see over the next few years. And honestly, the finance team put together a really great tool that projects our sales tax revenues each month. As we get actuals, it updates that projection so we can kind of see how we're tracking. Best case scenario, worst case scenario, most likely case scenario. So we're already partially tackling that in quarter 2.
Cool.
Develop an asset management plan, which we know is really not just gonna be accomplished in one quarter, because it takes an input from the community about how do we wanna see ourselves develop and what do we wanna get done. But to start to understand our current assets to better manage them. Track impacts from special districts and external partners so that when we make IGAs, we're strategic in thinking about being fiscally responsible and making long-term plans that benefit the whole community and benefit our partners as well as the county in terms of offerings. Forecasting economic conditions for 26 and 27. I don't know that we've done a great job of forecasting in the past, and we really want to be better about doing that, because the decisions we make over the next several years together aren't just about what now, they're about the next 10 and 15 years for the county, and we wanna be thinking that way when we make decisions. Creating agendas, updating internal systems and processes. We wanna continue to develop our staff, we wanna continue to create processes that allow people to just show up and do their job and do it well. Because they feel supported by the processes and organization as a whole. And then I'll let you guys read the alignment piece and ask any questions.
Candace, how realistic do you think it's gonna be to get, for this year's budget season, to be able to get people's multi-year grants into their 5-year projected budget?
I think we have tracked down a lot of the grants for the simple fact that we stood to lose a lot of them. So I think knowing they exist is first and foremost. I think it will depend how fast I can replace myself as the finance director.
Sure.
So that I've got someone in here that really can be strategically working with people on their budgets. But also knowing that Liz blocked out that time and I still intend to fully be a part of that process. So I think if I can, get that position filled relatively quickly, then we would want to start working on those processes with departments. And what I'm asking for any grants going forward is that they come to, we've got an administrative group that's made up of a couple of different department directors, myself and Lauren, to review contracts, IGAs that are gonna renew, to review grants. And one of the things that we are gonna be asking staff for is to show up with a budget, show up with a plan, show up with an understanding of what the grant requirements are, so that we've got all of that information together before it comes to you guys.
Yeah.
I know it sounds like it's hard to turn down grant money, but if you really can't manage it and you don't have a plan for it, it really is more of a liability to say yes to money that you can't use. If you don't report on it correctly, they're clawing a lot of those dollars back. And we just wanna make sure that we really can be transparent and we could cover our operations even without that. And so I think it is realistic to think that we could get most of our grants budgeted for, because we've really gotta go back and do the ones that we've got in place, but going forward, it really won't even be considered unless you have a plan with a budget, and finance can help you build that budget, but it has to be there upfront.
Yeah. Okay. I'm thinking specifically about the sheriff's department. He seems to have a plan for building out capacity.
Yeah.
He's using some grants for the pilots of some of these positions, and then seeing where the grants are going to help us, and then when the grants drop off, and how much we will have to backfill with general fund, like that is what it looks like we're moving to.
Yeah.
And I want it now, so I would appreciate like being kept informed about like realistic expectations for
Yeah.
that, otherwise I don't wanna get frustrated by not having it. So realistic expectations, please keep us in check, me in check.
Yeah, it's not gonna be perfect tomorrow.
I know.
But, I mean,
But
Heath
for
and
this season, for this year,
Yeah.
please keep us posted.
because I do think there are times when the answer to whether we go for a grant or not is no. And that's not easy to say. But sometimes that's what needs to be said if we know that we couldn't fund that into the future.
Right.
Otherwise, you have to ask yourself, do I say no now, or do I say, I'm sorry, your job's gone because it's grant funded and now that funding's gone?
Right, and I definitely feel like the sheriff has, the largest budget in our
Yeah.
county, and that's where I'm feeling a little nervous about the decisions that are being made and how they're going to impact us for the next 5 years.
Yeah.
So, and
And
his plan is that budget will get even bigger.
Yeah.
And so I want to be able to make really informed decisions about the entire county with his plans.
And he's reached out to me, we've met multiple times.
Yeah, I love that.
And we are gonna be meeting regularly, to work on his budget together, to be realistic about what we can do.
Great, thank you.
Does seem like it's getting all of the, and not that it's not needed or it's not a good thing, but it does seem like a lot of the big capital stuff is going into the sheriff's department right now, from vehicles to remodels to, grants funding new positions, things like
Jeez.
that,
It's a lot of investment.
It really is, and there's still so many loud cars running around keeping me up at night. We're getting back out of this, though.
Yeah, I just want, when all the hard decision making comes in front of us, starting in September, I want us to really have that longer term. I remember looking at the budget this year and seeing all those roll-ups that showed 5 years out, but nobody had actually, all people had done was like a
3% projection.
three,
Yeah.
yeah, which is not, it's like,
Realistic.
okay, I see the framework, but nobody's actually put information into it last year. So what I'm hearing from you, Candace, is that this year that information is gonna start to get put into there.
It will be in there, and I think you have to recognize that our historical record keeping
Yeah.
was not completely accurate. So what I'd like to start doing is showing people their previous 2 years of budget to actuals, knowing that the tracking has gotten so much better in this last year. So that people can start to see what they've actually done to inform how they budget for the next year, and use those actuals to project into the future what they think they will be doing based on like, are we adding staff, are we taking staff positions and moving them to a different department? Or what do you anticipate spending this year if it's a housing situation? And just having a more like big picture of how does what I do feed into what we do as a community.
Right, yeah.
With things like forecasting economic conditions, do we see increased revenue through property taxes as Mark catches things up on, like, it seems like my whole neighborhood just finally got that big up bump that hit everyone else a while ago, and I'm just wondering, like, do we have a good handle on, with his difficulties with implementing Tyler, trying to move to the new system, how behind are we on getting modernized on our property taxes, and does that
I'll
factor in?
really need to spend a little bit of time with him.
Okay.
Since it's day 2, we haven't done a lot of one-on-one meetings yet. But I think I need to understand from him, what do you need in terms of the system? What's the best transition, what's the best transition time? So that we don't find ourselves not knowing, last year it seemed when I came in, we were really scrambling to get our assessment values back as a county, which then that delays planning the budget.
Yeah.
So I wanna understand that piece from him, how I can support him, make sure we actually get systems that are set up correctly. And then I also know that some of the legislation last year caps how much we can raise it each year. It's why we kind of maxed the mills this last year, because now we're capped at a certain amount of increase per year. I think it was 5.5%. So understanding what does that mean in terms of how much actual property tax value can we capture each year, because we won't be able to recognize the full value of the increase in property values.
Okay, and I apologize for asking questions, like
No,
you're,
it's
like you're a
totally fine.
seasoned pro already. I guess in my head, I was like, well, maybe you've heard of, have a thought on it from the finance department perspective, but I know the property tax thing's kind of a work in progress, so
Yeah.
I guess there isn't really any concrete answers there.
Well, you can ask me whatever you want. If I don't know, I'm not gonna sit up here and pretend like I do. I'm gonna say, I don't know, but I'm gonna go find out. So
So big picture, I just kind of want to tie this all together, what I'm thinking. So the budget book is really our big communication to the community that shows what we spend, what we think we're gonna spend, which is gonna be much tighter going into the future from the work that we do. But then also a description of the resources and services that we provide to the people that live in Lake County, and then our goals. So one thing that we definitely need some development on are department goals. The first time I ran through kind of the memo cycle with folks, I got 4 different sets of goals, cause each memo they created new goals, and I was like, whoa. And then in the budget book, they created new goals, and I was like, back up, people.
Do
This
you
is,
know what your goals are?
well, yes,
Right.
I had some sharp comments. But so I want to slow people down and focus them. So our priorities that you provide should feed into department priorities, and then they should feed across the board collaborationally. It should all be connected. We shouldn't be creating short and long-term goals in departments that are in a vacuum and independent. They should all be related. And I would like to use our budget book as that tool to connect it all and tell that story based on the feedback and guidance that you provide. And the big part of that for me is if we are making the right goals, we're ensuring that our resources that you allocate are going to the right pockets and buckets in our community to take care of the people who live here. So that's what I'm gonna really work on. But also when we create these goals and work through these priorities, we're really promoting sustainable, forward-thinking planning that's rooted in real needs and data versus I just want to make this better, because we get a whole lot of goals that say that. It's gonna be a tool of accountability, because I'm asking folks to provide an update on their goals. So sure, I know that I haven't completed all of my short-term goals for 2025, or even engaged in some of my long-term goals. But knowing that I'm going to have to provide the evidence not only for accountability to myself, but the people in my department, county leadership and electeds, and the people of Lake County. I wanna show what we did. So that's gonna be a real shift for how staff think about reporting this back. And I'm really excited, cause we made the best darn budget book that we have ever made last year, and this year it's gonna be even better.
Awesome.
Love the optimism.
It's tight.
Foundation of reality.
Cool.
Great.
So that's what the administration team has for you today. Next, you're gonna have the Health and Human Services group chatting with you a little bit, followed by that, the Community Planning group. This afternoon, in your work session, you will have an opportunity to provide any feedback that you wanna give on how we've set these up or priorities, or you can just be like, y'all are awesome, go forth and change the world, but in a very local place.
Very
Cool,
Thank you, Liz.
very welcome.
Public health and human services.
That all sounds really good. One thing that stuck with me of mine was their recommendation that the money we get from them not be counted on to run our budget, and that it should, that, you know, Nell's recommendation was that should go to a savings account and then capital improvements and not be relied upon, because it could just disappear overnight. And it fluctuates so much. I'm looking at the history of it, it's been as high as 12 and as low as 2.
Yeah.
Now it's sitting around 5 or 6, so.
Have you been in contact with her, or is that something on your radar for the future?
That's me.
I haven't been.
I've been working on this. Remember? We're not anywhere close to like starting, just FYI, like
Starting what?
to wean ourselves off.
Yeah.
That would be like the long-term plan.
Yeah.
It'll take years.
Yeah, but Nell and I have chatted quite a bit, and I've spoken to commissioners from Clear Creek County to talk about how their weaning off of the Henderson mine has gone, learnings and successes, and
Did you
then
call that a wean or like a hard stop?
But yeah, I think they got more of a Band-Aid ripped off down there, didn't they?
yeah, and I think, yeah, a lot of learnings, they
Yeah.
shared a lot of learnings.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, and then also
That
there's
makes
a,
sense.
an event down in Arizona in August, best time to go to Arizona.
Oh, yeah.
Nice and cool.
Where
It's the morning.
it's like about it's kind of like around community planning, kind of like around community planning for mining communities. And I'm gonna hope to go to that, and Nell said she could get a group of people together who could kind of give some feedback and learnings from their experiences
Nice.
that could help inform whatever plan we come up with.
I wonder if there'll be folks from Bisbee there.
They're on my list.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's,
Spent a lot of time there.
it's gonna be near their locale, like I think their story's kind of like the central idea.
Yeah, I'll bet.
Yeah.
Interesting, cool down, but yeah, you can tell it's been hit hard by mine closure.
Bisbee,
Yeah,
Yes.
big gravel.
it was a copper mine.
Freeport,
site.
it's Freeport, yeah.
Turned it into a gravel site.
I don't know what they're doing, my mother-in-law lives down there.
Anyway, we digress.
Just all that to say that I haven't talked to Candace about it yet, so that she can lean into like, what are the departments?
I'm on day 2.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get there fast.
You're not a pro yet? No.
And just like, and it seems like the work that's already being done is gonna set us up for that.
Thank you.
Okay, so our project team is the Health and Human Services team. Laura Cruz here today talking. Am I on mute?
You shouldn't be.
Okay, cool.
Did you push play? I didn't hear it say recording.
Quick escape.
Okay. Oh, that's not mine.
Let's just double check.
Audio.
So we're recording, yeah,
Okay, cool.
and we're, you can hear us too.
Okay, cool. Perfect. Alright, so Health and Human Services project team. I'm gonna go through a little bit of our different departments that are involved in this team, and then some of our like crossovers or intersections is what I'm calling it, that we each have with each other. So here's our team. I didn't mean to put DHS at the top, but okay. And so we have public health. It's actually not UC extension, it's CSU, my bad. The Justice Center, Veteran Services, and OEM. And here's where I feel like our intersections are, not I, but we talked about this. So we all provide community services. We all have a huge dependency on federal and state funding, and then we all play a role in emergency response. I know that community services is pretty broad. We'll kind of break that down later on. So each of our groups were kind of tasked to identify community issues that we saw that we could work on as a group, that we all could, at least one or two of the departments could be coordinating together to work together on some of these things that have emerged in the past couple of years. So here are our issues. There's a lot of them, and a lot of them are tied to DHS. I apologize. You know, our public health and DHS people are typically the extroverts in the room, so we talk a lot. But I also wanted to show, is there any way I can move this
Far
around?
right, more, go to hide floating meeting tables.
Again,
Boom.
okay, bummer, okay, here we
There's
go.
You can make that the tiny one.
The dash on the upper left of that will make it smaller.
Okay, perfect, so y'all can see this. So we took our issues that we came up with and identified how they aligned with BOCC priorities. As you can see, a lot of them align with community well-being. If you think about our department, that's what we focus on primarily. Some of these though, in terms of the bottom two, when we're talking about countywide emergency preparedness, and then defining our roles, some of our different programs, we've learned that a lot of the community doesn't understand exactly how we work and what kind of situations we get involved in. So looking at operational efficiencies. Drug testing is also an operational efficiency for DHS. This is a big deal for us. And we'll talk about some of those solutions that we've come up with. Trauma-informed care, if you don't know what that means, it's something that I didn't understand when I first started my job. But it is a different way of thinking in terms of enforcement for specifically Sheriff's Office, but also our Child Protective Services and APS folks. It's really understanding sort of the mental challenges that people face when they're in crisis situations, and how do you diffuse that, and how do you communicate with the individual so that you have better outcomes. And so we're gonna unpack that a little bit more in terms of solutions. Some of these are not things that you guys are unaware of. We've talked a lot about them in the past couple of months. One of the things that we did see really aligns with a unique priority that the BOCC has, that we may need to pull more people into the room. Glad Jackie is here. Is housing affordability and condition of housing. We're seeing a lot of families that their mobile homes or their homes are becoming unlivable, and we don't have anywhere to place them. A lot of them own their mobile homes or homes, and moving them to a scenario that is much more costly is very difficult. So I'll give you an example. One of the houses that we've worked on through one of our grants, we've done the electrical the electrical wasn't working. We did the heating system, that was not working, and the plumbing system, all the pipes burst. And so that family was displaced, and in the advocate shelter for a couple of months. So these are the things that we're running into that, families have houses that the condition is just not livable, and a lot of these folks have, kids. So they're on that verge of us potentially having to remove the kids and unless we can get, the houses taken care of. It's kind of this weird function that DHS has become involved in because it has this correlation with child welfare and nobody else is really doing that in this area. Except for C4 is doing some of the energy efficient and, support when it comes to like propane and things like that. And, things like heating and heating situations and things like that. So we're kind of dipping a little out our toes outside of, what we would typically do as DHS.
Is there some kind of program to figure out how they got in that situation? Is there disability, drug use, alcohol, unemployment? I mean, you can't just sit there and let your surroundings deteriorate around you.
Yeah, so some of the folks that we've worked with are directly connected to the county, so it's people that are employed. But they're underemployed. I mean, they don't have the finances to take care of 6 kids, right? And then you're prioritizing feeding your kids over taking care of your house. You know, these repairs and, you know, this more directly, these repairs, say for instance to a heating system, can be, you know, $4,000 to $7,000, right? That is something that most of these families can't absorb, right? That kind of cost. If you go through some of our mobile home parks, there is a lot of old trailers. They're just falling apart. They're not made for being there that long or being, it's almost like a camper that's falling apart sort of situation. I've even worked on one of our county employees' roofs to get it from leaking, and they had a addition to their trailer and having to put house wrap around it because they didn't have the finances to put siding around it, so it was leaking. So there's a lot of these things that in those mobile home parks, it's the price of fixing it is just too overwhelming for families.
And I'll just dovetail, and Ann could probably speak to some of this too, with some of those units too, they might be at an age where you can't even move them.
Yeah.
And so it's not like they can replace them for something better because they can't even be moved.
Yeah, only get moved to the dump.
Yeah, the walls are literally buckling out.
From the snow and just age.
Yeah, and a lot of these are ones that are homeowners. They actually own their trailer. It's not necessarily an individual that's renting, but we're also running into some of those rental issues as well, where they may be renting from a family member and the family member doesn't have the money to fix the trailer. And so we're in a weird spot in terms of supporting them because we can't pay for repairs on a house that they don't own. And so it's this catch-22 for a lot of these folks that are actually, a lot of them are tied to child welfare cases.
Or are you also seeing situations where they're failing to pay their lot rent?
Oh, yeah.
And then you
We're
end up
paying
with a
a lot of rent
situation
right
where they get evicted because they're unable to pay their lot rent, but then what's left behind is something that can't be moved unless it's like craned up onto a large flat because it's no longer mobile
Yeah.
under current state law.
Yeah, like not from like, I don't know how to, this is a hard conversation, but it's like not from a lack of empathy or caring, but like this feels like a really slippery slope where if we get into like, we've gotta fix everybody's neglected home and we can't even fix our own infrastructure as a county, where do we draw the line on this? Like this could easily bankrupt, I mean, it could put a huge dent in what other services we're able to do and other mandated services. This is a tough one.
Yeah, and I'll let you know that this is kind of a weird situation for us. We inherited some ARPA funds through HCI, which is essentially right now the RAY, I think I'm saying that right, the RAY for our area, which is behavioral health entity. They basically had this leftover money, and actually HCI is going away after June 30th, but they had this leftover money that they were like, okay, Lake County, spend it on, spend this for us. And so we did dip into things that before I got here wasn't really aligning with DHS. We just kind of, the ball started rolling and we're slowing it down. We've been focusing less on home repairs, and more on rental assistance. One of the big challenges though is it's this compounding issue, Andy. If it's wherever we help a family in the crisis of things, it's like if we don't help a family with home repairs, that means we have to find placement for 5 kids.
Which costs us a lot more.
Which costs us a lot more
Yeah.
money. It's like this, I don't know the solution of this sort of compounding issue that we have in our community. And where we plug ourselves in, because we will inherit the issue somewhere down the line.
This is a social safety net.
I'm worried about the safety nets exceeding capacity and just breaking.
Yeah, and we are, yeah. I mean, we're gonna talk about that a little bit later. Definitely during this time, we're concerned about it, for sure.
Are the lot rents going up or, every year? Do they go up every year? Is there any leverage?
Y'all know more about this than I do.
There's like a limit on what they can raise them per year, right?
Well, we've got all kinds of ideas around this, but, so there is the Mobile Home Act now that provides a lot more. The mobile home, it was a very predatory, landscape for a lot of times. The traditional protections that were in place for tenants, they just weren't afforded to, tenants within mobile home parks. And so I can't tell you exactly what the cap is, but there are, acts, there's a lot of now laws protecting, the tenants within these mobile home parks, from, predatory, practices by the park owners. Also, there is a way to incentivize the owners of these parks to be good players, and that's something that we're gonna talk about. So it's getting some partnerships going, because they all have asks and wants
Yeah.
that our zoning doesn't allow for right now. And so one thing is to change the zoning in these areas, to work with the park owners and bring them on, make them more accountable, make them partners with us in affecting better change in these parks. So there's an opportunity for us to look at expansion of parks. All of them are pre-existing non-conforming uses. A lot of them would like to expand because of the demand, because this is a lot, there's an opportunity for us to work together to create better solutions for those owners. There's also, I'm sorry, I don't wanna take.
No, this is great, and this is where I saw like intersection with y'all's group as well. So
Yes.
we're dealing with it from like a social service perspective, y'all are dealing with it from a much broader perspective.
There's also an opportunity through Clayton Homes. Clayton Homes has an opportunity to remove these blighted situations and come in with new units. And that's maybe again a program that we can work with the park owners. It elevates their, but they'll actually get rid of that blighted situation for us of trying to find some place that they can be removed to. They have to have the asbestos inspections. They have to be taken to a landfill that will actually take those materials in. But Jackie and I were just at a housing discussion with Clayton Homes and what they might be able to do. So we're just looking at all the tools in the toolkit when it comes to housing. We're gonna have to come at this from so many different directions in order to really affect an effective change.
Seems like a great opportunity. You got the density. If you could just do a hybrid simple slab with a thickened edge and put a real house on there that'll last 100 years.
Mm-hmm.
A modular that's not much bigger than, you know, sometimes they got 3 bedrooms in those things and,
Most of them are 3-bedroom, 2-bath, most models are.
but they've already
There
got
is
the
gonna be
sewer and the
a
water.
pretty significant price point when you go from a HUD home to a modular or a manufactured, I'm sorry, manufactured home to a modular. There is gonna be, you know, so you just have to kind of figure out that
Can you
price
get
difference.
sorry if,
Oh, no, this is y'all's time
Yeah.
too.
can you get a mortgage on a,
There are specific
okay,
lenders for this and you know, they used to be, those interest rates used to be higher than traditional second than a home loan. But there are certain lenders out there, I even think Berkshire Hathaway has lending associated with it. Clayton, I believe, has lending associated with it. You may pay a little bit more in the financing, but there's some other flexible terms. There's like these extraordinary warranties. There are some other ways that they kind of offset some of that cost in maintaining those homes in better conditions. The other thing that we're realizing that we had an explosion in the 70s, right, of climax and population pressures that we were feeling at that time. So many of these aging units were a quick fix in the 70s
Yeah.
to get people housed in Lake County. And so here we are now at this time with these aging housing units that were a really quick fix, and so it's a really good learning lesson that we're now in that kind of same crunch, and we could just be kicking the can down the road if we're not looking.
Are all 3 of the major trailer parks in the same kind of condition, or is like Village at East Fork generally a little better off versus, I forget the names of them all now, but it's
Mountain View.
Mountain View,
Mountain View
Village
Village
East
East,
and
okay.
West are, I kind of feel like I'm jumping in a little bit.
No, you're good. This is what we're dealing with, right?
Yeah.
But, you know, Mountain View Village East and West had a really great plan for infrastructure, but that was based on congressional spending that I don't know where that's at. Last time we talked, they felt like they were gonna be able to move forward, but probably that's a very unknown landscape. Mountain Valley Estates, they have continuous problems with their discharge permit and their wastewater treatment plant. Lake Fork is probably the highest functioning out of all of them, but then we have other ones, like the one at we refer to it as the park at 515, which is at the top of 3rd Street, which is probably in one of our greatest disrepair that is currently trying to work through land use to try to come up with a better solution, but we've
the
got more
units are in
long.
disrepair or the infrastructure?
Both.
But there's certain,
They have no fire separation between units, the condition of their homes are exactly what you're saying, these are units that are
Yep.
probably between, you know, they stopped manufacturing this type of model in 1976, most of these predate that, and they just were not, you know, it was almost like effectively putting up man camps, right, in the 70s to help out the mind with housing, and so trying to make those last 55 years is just not realistic. But there are families that are, you know, we would be displacing
Yeah.
so many people in our community to come in with a hard line on these. And so we're trying to figure out what are sustainable changes that we can start seeing progress and better outcomes. That park recently had a sanitation spill, and that was concerning. But we were able to, public health partners, we were able to isolate the problem, contain it, and not create any impact to drainage or stormwater. So, but they are continuing to be blighted situations that maybe through a brownfield redevelopment grant, maybe through, I mean, we're gonna really wanna be diving into what are our options, how can we get the park owners on board to affect better outcomes, because every single one of them, we're gonna meet with one of the park owners today, Mountain View Village East and West, they're all asking for something. And so this is a good time to change the zoning to protect those, because they're all zone business, which could be really opening the door to not protecting these communities that house so many people within the community. So changing the zoning and working on and creating opportunities. And this is not just Lake County, there's some great models like in Denver that have done exactly kind of what we're gonna propose to do. So we've got models out there that we've been watching and seeing how it's working, so that we can kind of have some lessons learned and bring in better solutions for our community.
And we've been working on Band-Aids, essentially so that we do not have to remove children.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing. I mean, we had 2 foster care events, trying to recruit foster parents last week. We only had 2 families show up. We have no foster care in this area, so we always have to place them outside of this area. You know, we have a couple of cases right now that are on that verge, that have a lot of children. And so these are the things that we have to we feel like we need to put Band-Aids on, because we don't have the resources in our area to take care of it in a different way. So long-term, we would like to be at the table for long-term solutions, right? Because it is one of these things that we're just dealing with mostly from a child welfare perspective.
Yeah.
You know, and I think we're looking for like innovative ideas, Matt, even from going to the Board of Review and saying, is there a group of local contractors that would step in occasionally and help certain situations, and how do we incentivize that? What can we give back to them, but can we draw on our local resources to give back to our community? So it would be something, I think it's just a whole array of different things that we've got to have a lot of partnerships, like you said. You know, we can't solve all the problems solely, but we've got to look for those partnerships and those opportunities throughout the situation to affect change and look for partnerships to creating better solutions and outcomes.
Maybe it's time to revisit my pie in the sky tiny home village ideas by the airport industrial park.
To revisit that, and I would say
It was one of my things I ran on. I was like, I'm gonna build a tiny home village up by the airport. If anyone who wants to get out of those trailer parks can have a little home on wheels they can move into, and it's basically
that might
another.
be kicking it down the can, down the road, just like we did in the 70s.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna mention,
Yeah.
because we have units that are not built to building code. They're not gonna house everyone in your community that needs housing, but they would take some pressure off, so you know, that would appeal probably to a certain segment, but I don't know the sustainability of that long term, as far as our community housing needs.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
So what you're saying is it's pretty easy to fix, we just need to get to work.
That's what I heard.
Hey, I was very appreciative that one of our electrical companies basically did the work for free for us, for one of the houses. I mean, they gave us a quote, but I've never seen a bill, so it's,
Don't remind her.
I'm not.
Quality electric, is it?
Well, and this would.
No, it's a, not independent,
Pro.
no,
A-phase?
no.
There's no shortage of electricians in this.
We did a thing with them, purchase order for them, I cannot remember the name of that.
Legacy.
Is it Pro?
No, it wasn't
Wasn't
Pro,
Pro.
Pro's the one that didn't show up.
No.
And I don't know. This
No,
would
they were
be-
BB, they were in BB,
Oh.
Oh,
oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay, we just ran through all of our local.
Yeah, really.
And
I will figure it out.
I don't know if the incentive is, you know, being able to make it as a charitable donation of
Yeah.
their work, so that, you know, it's a nice little write-off,
Something we could potentially work with the community foundation on, so it is a write-off, right? Yeah,
and then really lift that up throughout the community and, you know, get opportunities to really, celebrate that and get recognition, and I think that builds trust in their business. I think it's a good business decision.
It would be nice to start moving from the trailer to the modular, same footprint. If they wanted to expand, say, okay, but we're not gonna let you do trailers, it has to be on a slab or something, that's gonna
Slab
last a
adds
while.
so much additional cost, though, that's
Yeah, but
the
if you don't
only,
have a slab, then it's not gonna last 100 years, it's gonna, in 30, 40, 50 years, they're gonna be in the same boat.
Yeah.
It's just hard to think about investing that much into something you don't own the land underneath of it.
True,
100%.
true, but if you look at places like in Summit Cove, where it used to all be trailers back there,
Right.
yeah,
it's all morphed into pretty nice modulars, people take care of it. I don't know what the rental situation is, but
so then you're looking at like a land trust model. And really curious to, just look at, what that cost dynamic looks like.
Yeah.
But, absolutely, Swan Meadow, over in Summit is another one that, took kind of, again, really helped transition people in to a modular community versus so it's just the cost burden of it. What would that payment be for a modular and the space rent together? Is that still hitting the mark of affordability?
Nathrop has it too, right?
I have a company to throw out there. We're buying our home from Dreamwood Homes
Dreamwood,
in Penrose. They have a 2-bedroom that's a little over 100,000. Ours is a custom home, but we've been very impressed. I used to do remodeling. I had a business in Tennessee and got to tour the facility, got to see like the work that they do. And our home is gonna be the first home in Leadville, I think, that they're doing. And so I'll let you know how it goes.
yeah,
But yeah, they're a really, really cool company. They do all spray foam insulation.
Dreamwood?
Dreamwood,
Okay.
yeah, local. I mean, not local.
Penrose pretty local.
Penrose is pretty
for the
local.
grand scheme of things.
Yeah, so they also do the septic for half the price.
The
So
install septic.
yeah, 15,000 instead of 30.
So
why
hopefully
did
they're
they do that?
registered with us.
That's what I was
They're-
trying to say.
They
You don't
actually
know about
called your
them?
office last week.
Okay.
Yeah, so they're working on that.
Getting your installers license.
Wait a
Yeah.
second, how are they doing your septic for 15,000?
Because they do all of the ground, it's all inclusive, they do all the groundwork. It's not just building of the house, they do,
They pour the slab?
Yeah, I don't.
it's a foundation, it's not a slab, it's a crawl space.
15,000 does sound like amazing price
Yeah.
for a septic system, but
Alright, Tiny Home Village back on discussion.
Yeah, go tour this facility, I'm serious.
Can we, can we visit your,
Yeah,
show your
it'll
house?
it'll probably be December till
Oh.
it's done, but yeah,
But they'll start the groundwork and,
this summer.
so you're, well, I don't
Yeah.
wanna derail it.
Can we circle back on this at a different
Yes,
time when,
yes.
we're,
We're not talking about all of this,
Yeah.
yes, I agree.
just cause there's,
I can talk about
like Ann
houses all
said,
day.
this might be one facet of a multifaceted
Yeah.
approach that, if we come up with enough solutions, we might put a dent in this thing.
Well, this is the one issue that we identified that we kind of felt like involved more of our groups, right? Outside of just the human services group, that and emergency preparedness, cause we're all kind of in line with that. Cool, well, I've made it through the second slide. Carry on.
oh gosh, we have 26.
Oh, I only have like 6, so we're good. I just wanna go through some of our project team accomplishments. DHS sits in public health, we're all in the same building, so we get to talk to each other a lot, but we've had some great collaboration with OEM lately. Harry, our veteran service guy, he talked in our last meeting, which we were so excited about. Love Harry. But yeah, we've had some good strides that we've made over the past few months. Substance abuse, obviously we've talked a lot about this as a problem. Public health is diving more into the specifics of that from the perspective of what different drugs are being accessed in our area, what is some of those trends that we're seeing in our area that's in comparison to some other counties that are our size. What are some of those contributing factors? So they've been a part of the opioid abatement council. They're also they've had a grant to do harm reduction. So those are some things that we collaborate on when we talk about how can we address the issue after it's happened, but not necessarily from a proactive side. So that's the part where we're trying to work on. Drug testing for child welfare cases. I got tired of calling around to our medical facilities in our area to get this service. And so we just decided to take it on ourselves. So we have a Northwest Directors Association. I reached out to them. I was like, who has this same problem? And they connected us with a company that will handle all of the chain of custody process. They'll even go to court for us if we need to. There's sweat patches, so we've trained 3 of our staff members to do that monitoring. The biggest concerns for most of our healthcare partners in this area is just safety, because these are not always the happiest people that need to take a drug test. So our folks have to interact with them anyway, so we're taking that on. Done. If you ever wanna try one out, come on down to the office. We got 5 extra to try them out on county employees.
Drug tests?
Yeah.
Will we get some drugs before? See if it's accurate?
You know, you might have some county employees that are a little adverse to trying this out, so anyway,
I'm clean, I'll try it.
I'm clean.
I'm sorry, Chris.
Moving on, access to mental health and general health care. We have been meeting with what is now called Elevated Community Health, which we know them as Community Care Clinic. Lauren has been a big proponent of making for sure that they understand what our needs are. We need more bilingual providers. What I heard today, and I didn't know this, our new nurse practitioner that's working there is bilingual. I was like, oh, that's great. So Jackie is bilingual. That's been super helpful. We did just lose the LCSW, so the licensed social worker through the community care clinic or elevated community health. A couple of weeks ago, they are looking to hire a new person, and we've really been pushing for them to be somebody that can see kids and bilingual. We do not have a mental health provider in our area that takes Medicaid and works with kids, which is a problem. We spent a lot of money. She's a really great person, but we spent a lot of money with a local psychologist, but they don't take Medicaid. So we need to figure out a solution for that.
Any options with Sol Vista?
Sol Vista is a, how do I be nice?
That's probably enough.
Yeah, there you go.
That's right there.
We
Okay.
need consistency, there we go. Yeah, that's a big challenge. Bell Health has actually been pretty great in terms of they were not able to find a provider to come up here. We tried to provide them a space to do that, but they've been a great partner in a sense of with child welfare. If we have a kid that needs an assessment or even an adult that needs an assessment, they get them in quickly, because normally those assessments take like 6 months to get in with somebody. They've been coordinating with us, and while we do have to transport, in those situations, mostly family transports them, we're able to get them into their facilities, which is great. Hoping one day that they will be able to be here. I think there's some opportunities that are coming up where Bell Health's gonna be in our community a little bit more, which is exciting. So that is one thing. we have been advocating for, elevated community health, whatever, at this point, they're still a community care clinic in my head. To go from 3 days a week to 5 days a week, so they're trying to build up their, clientele in order to make sure they have the finances to be able to make that sustainable. A lot of that's going to come from their own outreach to the community, and we can help support that.
Oh, yeah, I was just gonna say, have we gotten in touch with our, any collaboration with the communications department here about getting some word out about the new elevated
That's a
community
great
health?
suggestion. I think we need to, we're actually meeting with them Thursday, that's something we can bring up to talk about, because they did just make that rebranding. I think it's helpful because it was Summit Community Care Clinic and they're in multiple counties at this point. But yeah, that's a good suggestion. Another thing is public health just kicked off the community health needs assessment. This is a required assessment / plan for public health. We had about 10 to 12 different organizations, a lot of county different departments involved as well, so we're continuing down that path. You guys are familiar with this at this point because you are the health, what are y'all? Board of Health, there you go. Hospital discharge planning, oh my gosh, this is so frustrating. Lauren's gonna be working on this from a high level,
I met with him yesterday.
okay. Great, I hope it went well. It's, okay,
We have big gaps in our healthcare system. A lot of folks who are being discharged from St. Vincent's are still really sick, but don't need a hospital level of care, and there's no place to discharge them to. We did learn yesterday that Sol Vista is no longer going to help St. Vincent with discharge planning, care coordination. They're just gonna do evaluations for mental health and then be done with it. So a lot of folks that need a particular nursing level of care, we're having to figure that out with DHS dollars. We get $37,000.
we're gonna get 30 next year. Oh, great.
$30,000 a year to do adult protective services. Yeah, and we're having to do care coordination for folks down to nursing home level of care in Denver. So I talked to Andy yesterday. I think he's open to having more like roundtable, like having a group of us get together on some of these more challenging cases. But at the end of the day, it's uncompensated care for them. It's, we are the safety net. We don't wanna, there's no homeless shelter for people to get discharged into, not that that's a great option either, but that's the nature of our healthcare system currently.
It's statewide, I'm dealing with it right now in the Front Range.
Chris, one of the things maybe you can help us out with is, having some of these communications with my nurse husband, he's worked for Common Spirit for, 8 years now. And there's Medicaid regulations that they can't just drop people. And so this is some of the things that Andy may say this is like the reality of it, but they can lose their Medicaid certification by some of the things that they're doing.
The issue is some of these people are not enrolled in Medicaid yet.
That's what I was gonna say.
But our situations that we've been running into, they are.
Oh, okay.
And so we need to know kind of the pathway when we do run into these situations, like what can we do to hold them accountable?
Because we've had that situation before, and talked about mental health and stuff like that in terms of their obligation to provide. But that's just
Emergency room,
emergency
that's
care,
not
it's not,
Yeah.
it's not inpatient, so.
There's also regulations around Sol Vista that they should be doing a lot more than they are, and they're getting paid to do some of those things, so I think there's a series of really hard conversations that we need to start having with healthcare providers in this region.
Yeah, Sol Vista, I will be bringing before you guys a contract that we're supposed to sign with Sol Vista for something, that they sent me last week. it's something that I would really like for us to talk through, because I don't think that they're actually doing the things that they're supposed to.
Well, if that's coming up now, that gives us the opportunity perhaps use some leverage to
Yep.
have this discussion and tie them in a little bit more specifically as to what the expectations
Yeah.
are.
So anyway, that's been exciting. Next, some more issues, domestic violence. We've already talked a lot about this with this group. This is a really challenging issue that has a lot of factors that contribute to it. I will say that we mostly play whack-a-mole when it comes to domestic violence as DHS. I know that we need to figure out ways for prevention of these situations. I think that is a big challenge, and also figuring out who's the right group to take on prevention for that. Ultimately, we find out about it mostly when it comes through a child welfare case. And so in my mind, our role is definitely from the addressing the issue after, but we need some more support in terms of intervention and prevention. The advocates have communicated to us as of last week when we met with Senator Bennett that they're 77% through their budget for the whole year.
For the shelter.
For the shelter,
Just
yeah.
to be clear, not for their whole program.
Yeah, but that's where people go, right, when we end up in these situations, so there are concerns about really that prevention and intervention piece of it.
Well, there's so many things that are gonna be making it worse.
The
Like
more
we can see it, it's a
Yeah.
cumulative factor of like not having enough money to feed your kids, not having a job, not getting paid enough at your job, like all those things.
Your roof is falling off your
Yeah.
house.
All those things.
Yep, stressors.
just intensify.
It's like a tidal wave in slow motion.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
County emergency preparedness, Claire's been doing a great job about coordinating with us, trying to round up the troops. Some of the things that we've recently done is we inventoried the Red Cross trailer, which was actually in a pretty good shape. I was a surprise. So DHS and public health, we do play a big role when it comes to emergency preparedness and management. So public health takes on sort of the triage it, definitely if it is a situation that we have an outbreak or things like that. DHS manages kind of manages the shelter side of it, which we're going through training. One of the things that we're accomplishing is going through training. Extension office is doing some interesting things too, things I never really thought about, but trying to figure out how to protect our livestock should there be an emergency event. So we do have livestock in our county. And so these are some interesting things that she's been working on in her role. Trauma-informed care, Justice Center is actually reallocating some of their grant funds to provide a training around this for first responders.
Community justice.
Community justice, well, I called it the Justice Center. Okay.
I totally understand that
Yeah.
connection, yep.
Yep. He wasn't there Thursday, so, yeah.
It's all good.
Yeah, so helping kind of shift some funds around. We really feel like this is a helpful thing for child welfare cases. We didn't really have any funding for this, so this is a coordination piece of it that the Community Justice Center program,
Community justice
program, okay, is going to help us out with. So, Lauren and I actually would like to go to that training. I think it'd be helpful.
So.
Yeah. And then this is an interesting one. So defining the role of adult protective services in child welfare, public health. There's a lot of misconceptions, right, about what each one of our, even beyond this group, of what each one of our departments actually manages and how we manage things. One of the things that we,
Laura,
Would you please let
Oh,
them in?
let them in.
Thank you.
Hi, Duncan. One of the things that we're wanting to do is to work more closely with the school system so that there's a better understanding of the role of CPS. We get a lot of referrals that we screen out. And so wanna make for sure that the school system understands like what we do and how that process works. So that we can better either funnel situations to wrap around that may not necessarily meet the Child Protective Services situation or criteria, or if it is something that needs to go to CPS, then they're more informed about how to do that. A lot of times we get reports that's like one sentence, that's not very helpful to our group. So we're going to do some education around that. We've had some misconceptions too around the role of adult protective services. We have people that are living in interesting situations that they have chosen to live that way. And adult protective services that's not really the role of adult protective services, is to dictate how somebody wants to live. And so we've had some kind of cross miscommunication, now communicating on what our role is. Same thing with public health. We've had some situations that have come up that actually tie into the same thing that I'm thinking about from an APS perspective. That they were called into it, and again, it wasn't really public health's role, so we're just trying to sort through that. And that's really an operational efficiency situation too. Alright, potential challenges on the horizon. I'm calling these pivot points. So these are those issues that we were talking about earlier. Those are things that we identified a couple of months ago that we wanted to work on. We may have a whole different scenario happen in the next few months that we have to pivot to think about how we address these issues. So here's a few of these things. We talked a little bit about when we discussed federal funding. Increased food insecurity is a potential issue. We're already seeing some cuts to USDA programs that support pantries like St. George. There's potential cuts to the school lunch and breakfast programs. While the state of Colorado is free breakfast and lunch for everybody, the school system may have to absorb more of that cost, which is a huge deal. I think Kate said it was about $300,000 expense last week, if they have to absorb.
They already do absorb $200,000.
Yes, this would be in addition.
And it would be up to like almost $600,000.
Yeah, food's expensive.
Yeah.
And then adverse changes to SNAP. There's been talks about reducing it from, I think, a $6.40 distribution per family per day down to below $5, which is where we were previous administration -2. So that's not good. And then also that potential for county match on SNAP, which would create a cap essentially. As you were mentioning, Andy, where's the breaking point? This would be a big breaking point for us.
It'd be $1 million match, right?
No, it'd be a $200,000 match if they did a 80-20.
If they did the 80-20.
Yeah,
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 That's assuming the state has money for that 80%.
Right.
yeah.
that's out of the $1 million.
And our issue is we're trying to get more people on SNAP that are eligible, but then we're going to end up into this scenario where we actually can't pay for it. So it's a catch-22. Wildfire danger, let me look up Claire wanted me to change the sentence. I'm gonna give you the correct sentence here. This is a concern of all of us. If we have a wildfire, who's actually gonna come and help us? She said uncertainty around the availability of federal and state resources for emergency support due to budgetary restrictions, staffing, and the possibility of concurrent incidents. So, you know, if we have a wildfire here and then there's a wildfire in Chaffey County, at the same time, we're looking at same resources being split further. I mean, just in general, the federal government is not communicating well as to what support they would be providing communities should something like this happen, so it's a big question mark, we can't plan, and that's what's frustrating. Another one, measles outbreak, we've already had some of these in our near areas. We have a lot of rhetoric that's discouraging people from accessing vaccines. That doesn't help us. We are having issues in terms of like, what is it called, the herd?
Immunity.
Yeah, herd immunity, yeah, in our area, because we do have pretty low rates, at some of our schools in particular of vaccinations. So that's something that public health is doing a lot of education around. But also just if we have an outbreak, are we going to have the state and federal support to manage that we've had in the past?
I was actually getting my kid vaccinated, that's why I'm late, but they're starting to vaccinate 3-year-olds for measles now. Because of the
All of
increased
this.
prevalence of it.
Yeah, but for those that don't have insurance,
Yep.
usually go to public health for that. We can't pay for our vaccines. We're trying to figure that out. So, loss of medical benefits, we talked a little bit about. Medicaid may have work requirements for certain populations, and then also there's a lot of talk around discontinuing the expansion Medicaid, which is mostly single adults that don't have, you know, need access to healthcare but don't have healthcare within their jobs. This is about 650 individuals in our community. It's close to 10%, right? Is that the math? Okay.
The advocates also use expansion.
What?
The advocates also use expansion,
For Medicaid.
and they're getting less and less
Yeah.
of that.
And then unaccompanied youth due to deportations. This is a big fear in our community. We're already seeing less people applying for benefits because of fear of being deported, which means we have more kids that don't have access to SNAP or Medicaid. What our role is with child welfare in one of these situations, if we have individual or kids that are left without parents, ultimately we will try to place them with a family member, neighbor, friend. A lot of organizations in town have been working with families to put together what's called a family plan. So there's actually forms that have been distributed through the school systems as well as through DHS that basically allows a parent to designate who their kid would go to should they be deported. If they don't have a plan, that's where we inherit them. And I am concerned about this because, you know, we have people in our community that may not be thinking in this direction or have heard this message that they need to have a plan. And so if they don't, we have to figure it out. There is several of my counterparts in other counties that are now replacing some of the furniture in their offices so that they can house children should they not have a place to put them. I don't want to do that. I do have 2 camp chairs in my office. That would not be a great place for kids to go. So, that's wild to me. And it's a big concern for this community because we have such a high population of individuals that are undocumented, and a high population of people that feel like they have a target on them. So that's it. I think. Yep. Nope. Sorry, that was a lot longer than I thought, but it was great conversation.
Yeah, thank you.
Let us know, our group, if you have things that kind of fall within our world that you are hearing from the community that maybe we need to start talking about in our meetings. These are things that we identified as practitioners. You guys are immersed in our community in other ways, so feel free to put some things on our agenda. Cool. Love it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you, Laura.
You're up.
Alright.
43 slides, is that it?
73.
Oh, wow.
We're gonna be here till 5.
73 an hour?
Yeah. It's a serial presentation.
Yes.
Oh, good morning. Good morning. It's good.
It inspired me to text Jerry again. Jerry is coming.
He's the man.
Jerry just tired.
Oh.
Grab
I'm in the way, I'm sorry.
it. Hey, I see you behind me. You want me to coach me? Nice. Do we have presentations pulled up?
Yes. Yep, right there. And then you have to push share.
You have to do the share on that.
Standing break.
I wasn't joking, sorry. Okay, whenever, do you need a break?
Anybody need a point of privilege? Rip it and rip it? Alright.
Just taking a standing break.
No, that's.
That's a lot of things. And so acknowledging that we do have 26 or 27 slides, going through them pretty quickly.
It's not 73.
73, so see, that's like when I tell my husband I spent a different amount, and then I go, actually.
It's a strategic tactic you have there.
Yeah.
Okay.
No. Usually we make those decisions together. Alright, here we go. So, community development, and just as Laura did, humble presenter for all of these departments, and these are the departments that make up your community development team. Duncan is with us, and I think that Adam may be joining and some others may be joining, so I'll watch for them to pop in. But it's community planning and development, public works, the airport, tourism and economic development, parks, rec and open space, water management, office of emergency management, who we make float in with us. They kind of float between two different groups, the last group and our group, because they have interfaced with us pretty dynamically as well, and then the library. So those are the departments, and what we did is we went through your housing policy, so we went through your different buckets of priorities, pulled out your priorities, told you kind of that history and action to date, and then kind of the ongoing, and then just looked for, you know, that we are aligning our budget goals in 2025 with your goals as well, and so we've been thoughtful about that. So we're just gonna jump in on housing. And so, clarify Lake County government's role in addressing housing challenges. And so we're just gonna kind of lift up to you that on the national and state levels, community housing needs have driven local governments to participate in finding solutions for their communities. In so many cases, our development community or our developers, for a whole host of reasons, are finding it, and this is not going to be news to any of you, very hard to bring in any kind of affordability into developments. The pressures on labor cost, I mean, the building industry has taken some of the heaviest hits that have resulted in increasing costs. But the things that we've stepped in to bridge that gap on is, to date, these are all of the grant opportunities that we went out and were successful in being awarded. The first one on the list, for the $48,000, that assisted with the creation of the Regional Housing Authority. The next is the incentives grants that's right now that we're using for the infrastructure, the 1.184 million. Has been providing infrastructure for the 10-2 project. The $240,000 DOLA grant, capacity grant, this was awarded, and just again, to just understand kind of that breadth of how many communities within our state are reliant on these funds to come up with housing solutions for the communities. This particular award was given to 54 projects that represent 87 unduplicated local governments. So I mean, this is just the tools in the toolkit that are being used not just by Lake County, but throughout the state. And but that particular grant was awarded to us to support Prop 123 commitments. That provided us the funding. Jackie's position within CPD is offset her salary by that $240,000. It also pays for Michael Yerman. It also pays for us having a Prop 123 commitment and follow through. We also have, and I think it's coming up in one of the slides, but maybe not, we have an incentive to get our fast track process in place and tight and tidy, as someone would say, before the end of the year, because there's a $50,000 incentive for us to do so. So we are on track to get that done. Then the $850,000 in congressional spending was awarded. Again, that is kind of an unknown at this particular point. We've been forging forward, and you'll hear more this afternoon during your work session on Housing 10-2, so I'm not really going to dive too much into that other than this is 24 units with 100% local workforce and averaging a 96% AMI, which is pretty exciting. Also, this has been, I don't want to go way back in the record, but there's just been a lot of collaboration with the Regional Housing Authority and the Housing Coalition to date. Also, and I think I get into this a little bit more in the presentation, but we've been working on housing in Lake County since before housing needs assessment, our original one, and actively looking at solutions for well over a decade. So this is not a new task for us. I'll admit Peter Day. Our ongoing work is really to now lift up and collaborate with the Regional Housing Authority. So exciting to have 2 new board representatives on that board and the potential maybe for a new executive director. So we'll be working really closely with them as well as with the Housing Coalition. Obviously, you'll talk this afternoon about the completion or the ongoing 10-2 project. And then that $50,000 incentive to have our fast track process in place by the end of the year. We are really gonna front load the one community project, comprehensive plan side of the project with affordable housing. It's gonna be one of our first topical areas that we talk about. The city is really wanting to dive in. They're utilizing $50,000 of ARPA money to look at policies. And so we just wanna make sure that that's very succinct. There's a real benefit in our land development codes, our municipal code at the city and our land development code at the county
to be really succinct with one another. It provides an opportunity for development now to kind of pit us against each other and also to kind of come out this from a community-wide collaborative approach and initiative. So we really want to look at this. This is something that we really think is a kind of a first critical scope of work to dive into. And of course, this aligns with all of our budget and housing goals associated with budget. Next, there were talk within your goals about funding mechanisms. And so after the housing needs assessment, and I think it was actually it was 18. We created a stakeholder subcommittee that was led by the housing consultant, Capelli consultant, with representation from the city, the county, LC BAG, to really dive in and look at funding mechanisms. And one of the most significant things that came out of that was the increase in the lodging tax through ballot initiative 2A in the city. But historically, there's been statutory barriers for the enactment of a lot of these taxation measures in unincorporated areas. But times are changing, and so we're really going to, dive into any types of funding mechanisms. The city of Leadville created their first short-term rental licensing regulations, and as you may remember, Lake County imposed a moratorium and revised the short-term rental regulations in 2023. Through that process, we created two different types of licenses. One is a standard license and one is called a primary. So standard licenses in Lake County now are capped at a certain percentage of our overall housing stock. And primary licenses are not, and those are for people that want to occasionally rent out their homes, but it is their primary residence, but they want to take advantage of the race series. They want to help make their home more sustainable, and they want to participate in the Airbnb or short-term rental program. And so we do not limit those, but we do for any second home ownership. We also created a overlay, which is a community housing overlay that further restricts short-term rentals, and that is really our West Park area. That was another place that we saw, a kind of a high percentage of what we refer to as our NOAA, or naturally occurring affordable housing. And so we did put additional limitations on how many standard licenses could be in those areas. We did that work in conjunction with our EPS, was our consultant, just to make sure staff really led this code change, but we did bring in a consultant just to look again, as landscape is forever changing, at any other strategies that we might have missed. So our ongoing work to support this goal will really be diving in to review the impact and benefit of these funding initiatives and whether they're viable in unincorporated areas, and just which ones would be the most beneficial to provide feedback for lobbying on any of these kind of initiatives. Of course, we will work with legal on all of those. And then we'll also be reviewing with our professional partners. So it is very often that we are participating with the American Planning Association or the Colorado chapter. There is a lot of ongoing work around these things. We're always looking at ways that other communities are finding wins in this arena. So we continue on with those strategic partnerships, also the Housing Authority and certainly the Housing Coalition as our advocacy partner. Because one of the great things about that capacity building opportunity is the potential for campaigns. 2A was wildly successful because of the Housing Coalition capacity building and campaign marketing that they did to assist with the eventual success of that initiative. Mm-hmm. And then again, just the ongoing affordable housing review with the One Community Project. Next was a priority around encouraging accessory dwelling units through reduced restrictions and incentives. So you may or may not know that the Land Development Code was updated to allow more flexibility within the business zone district, where you can actually have more than one ADU as long as it's serving something related to our housing needs assessment. So you can't add accessory dwelling units that you're gonna short-term rental, They can only be long-term rental, and they can only be assisting with identifying a need within our housing needs assessment. Right now, we have a code amendment that is sitting in the parking lot until we get done with our comp plan. After our comp plan, anticipate that we'll be doing a lot of regulation changes. And one of those is to make accessory dwelling units a use by right and no longer require a conditional use permit. And so that would just be an administrative review. So streamlining that process so that you don't have to get a conditional use permit to get those. The next is that we have to understand that we do have certain barriers from well and septic. So accessory dwelling units can be a barrier, but it can also be something that you wanna incentivize with your water augmentation plan. But I do think that just needs some careful consideration of where you wanna increase those densities. So that is kind of the ongoing work that we're gonna be doing again through the zoning review of the comp plan, looking at where do you wanna encourage density, where do you want to have ADUs, do you wanna have those more on the periphery in more walkable, accessible areas of the city, or is there consideration in outlying areas for them? They also though provide multi-generational housing, they also provide housing solutions for, we get folks in that say, gosh, I'd love to be able to put another dwelling unit on my property for my kids, my parents. So there are solutions out there other than just, creating additional density. So we would just wanna give some, real thoughtful consideration of that. And then we'll finalize those code amendments to make it a more efficient process for ADUs. Strategy on mobile home communities with infrastructure improvements, land acquisition strategies and supportive regulations. So just a little history, in 2017, the planning department, approximately then, we came in with a proposal to rezone and protect these communities, and political will didn't exist at that time. But we are looking to revisit that, and we've kind of talked about that already. I think I've talked about many of these in your last presentation, but this is really a time to dive in and look at how do we do some partnership with these park owners to elevate the housing opportunities and protect these, again, our NOAA housing stock. So we're excited about bringing in some solutions and to looking at that in a more robust way. And then just building partnerships, and I really think that that's something the planning department and CPD throughout, not just planning, but housing, and really have affected a lot of changes locally in collaborative approaches to projects. But also, these are just all the agencies that Jackie is interfacing with on a regular basis. She's on a first name basis, wherever we go, people wanna talk to her, and she always gets a foot in the door. So I just wanna kinda highlight, and I know that you've heard that before, no stranger to knowing that Jackie is our housing rock star. Now we are going into economic development, so glad you're here, Josh and Adam, and so feel free to jump in if you would like on anything. So we're right on board with enhancing the airport's infrastructure and development. So would you like to add anything in, Josh, to this?
Just looking at the bullet points, the market study was done for both rent and for leasing, so we have that data, which is nice to kind of give us some leverage or, some reasoning for like why we're pricing things that way. So I think that was money well spent to get a good dollar amount, or well, a cent amount, that is what it is, but help us kind of make sure our pricing is in line with the region, and cause we're, at least for ground leasing, it's kind of new to us, we only have one, and I don't think most of us worked for the county when it went in 2018. So it's kind of a first time, so we're just doing the groundwork to make sure that we're doing it right from the start, hopefully. The master plan, that was completed in 2015. That, I believe we have that on our CIP, which is the capital improvement program or project or something like that, plan, that the state makes us do. And so I think we're due for that in 28. It's usually every 10 years, so they bumped it a little bit just because of funding, I think. So I would say it's due now, probably was due a couple years ago. I feel like we're several iterations off of it at this point. The one we got from, I believe was Armstrong at the time, seemed like a lot of boilerplate, kind of wasn't very tailored for our airport. But it's what we have now, it's the drawings and everything, or what we go off. We have some updated ones that we did through Eaton Hunt for hangar development. But that will be funded through AIP funding, which is FAA grant dollars. So there's no cost to the county other than the match, which is, it's 10% total, but the state pays 5% of that 10%, so 5% match for us, so not a huge cost really. And then we got the RFP you guys approved last week, that I posted that and sent it out to several of the interested parties. It's on the airport's website, we just need to put it on the county's website as well. And then that's really about it. The airport, I mean, we're just kind of waiting, see what we get for RFPs, and then the infrastructure piece is always a hot ticket, trying to figure out, particularly sewer, and then natural gas would be the next one I'd say would be to prioritize. Three-phase power would be nice, but it's not absolutely necessary at the moment, just commercial power. But as we get commercial power going towards the hopeful industrial park, it's on the way, so I think it'd behoove that we have it at the airport. Because as we start to get just bigger aircraft, jets typically have a 28 volt DC system, and then they also often have a three-phase AC system. So we don't have commercial power, we don't have three-phase, so we can't power their power carts, their ground units to provide power to them.
That's sort of like their shore power, kind of?
Yeah, so they'll plug in, so we don't have to use
Yeah.
batteries, or it's just an external power source,
Yeah.
so that they can do maintenance or routine stuff on the aircraft. Often too, the like hydraulic carts to support vehicles, so like when we do testing, they'll have a lot of those run on three-phase. But we have a solution, we have a three-phase converter at the airport, that's wired up, and so they can turn that on and it makes three-phase power for us. So we've been getting by with that for now. But gas, I think, is a big piece. It's much cheaper to run natural gas than propane. Some of you are aware, I imagine, that live out a little further and that might have propane tanks. So when we heat a lot of hangars, it's costly. And then it's also just a safety issue, I think, with the propane tanks. We already have 5 up there already. I think they're 500 gallon or 1,000 gallon ones. When they paved there in 2020, a former county employee ran into one with a grader. It tipped over and broke the fittings off of it and everything, and it was kind of a mess. They now have like jersey barriers around them, but just like a safety piece. So
There's natural gas near up on Upper Loop Road. I thought that came from the airport.
they only there is that natural gas, the high pressure line that goes
Oh,
to
that's
the
the high
airport. Well, I think it's actually the county property, not the
Okay.
airport property. Same thing, I guess, but Excel has a high pressure line that goes through that to the north.
They can't tap into the high pressure line.
Well, they can, it's just they don't want, they'll make us pay for it.
And the regulator on that is.
They had some talks about, there was some rumblings and some unsubstantiated rumors of them wanting to extend a trunk or a stub into Stringtown. That was a couple years ago now, I haven't really heard anything about it going forward, that'd be really nice, because then they'd already have a natural step down to low pressure for that, and then we could tie in off of 24 up to the airport. But again, I haven't seen anything about that. We talked to, Tim and I went and talked to Excel and asked if they had any interest in funding some of this, cause they're gonna make revenue on it, and they're like, well, you need it, so you can pay for it. And then we'll make money on it regardless, so that's kind of the gist of the conversation.
Did you go to their competitor? Just kidding. Hey, when the RFP's getting released?
That's out.
Oh, it's out?
Yeah, I sent it off to all the local parties that had, local and nearby parties that had interest, and we put it on the website, and then I'm gonna do a little bit of social media posts this week just to kind of put it out a little bit further, and then it'll go on the county website today or tomorrow.
Cool.
Do you have a close date?
It's May 16th. So,
Alright, well, that's great. I know that makes somebody happy that I know at least.
Okay. Moving on.
that's it for that.
Advance the airport industrial park by identifying and attracting new businesses, extend the sewer infrastructure to the airport to support expansion. And so tourism and economic development and community planning and development have been working together on this pre-development review and planning. And I don't know if that number is exactly right. How much is in your budget?
Yeah, that's about right, 260.
260, and so we have additional funds in CPD to just help with that pre-development. Work on the project, as you know, Adam just brought you the contract to go into scope of work with Mead and Hunt to do the conceptual plan and the market demand study. And then based on there, we'll be ready to put it out for RFP for the architectural and engineering review once that concept work is done in the market demand with Mead and Hunt. And we'll be eventually hoping to attract a development partner once the plan is complete. There is still entitlement work that will need to be done as far as zoning of once we have the plan to work from. And just open it up to Melissa or Adam, they both, the three of us are working on this together. If there's anything else that you'd like to add.
Yeah, just wanted to mention, we're gonna have our kickoff call with Mead and Hunt, early next week. And then, they had anticipated about a 45-day, working structure to be able to put together, plans for us, so, you know, in 2 months from now, we could be in a pretty good position to further the work we're doing on the RFP, the larger RFP. To move this along, and we can, you know, hopefully have a roadmap for, 3 to 5 years where we will be able to actually, bring this thing to reality.
I would just mention it's really exciting that Mead and Hunt can do that quickly.
Yeah.
It's pretty extraordinary.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited about that, and the entitlement work will be done, a lot of that's gonna be in-house, so we're gonna save ourselves a lot of money by doing some of this, ourselves. So, when we get to that point, we'll be clear with you on what that looks like, but that's something we know how to do.
Yeah.
And then the Mead and Hunt engagement is coming out of the, economic development, budget.
Alright.
I did get some information today, just a heads up, like, I don't know what the plan forward is from this, or if this will change. But I talked to Tom, who's looking to build one of our ground lease hangars. And he said he has called 4 different companies, insurance companies, and no one so far will insure that hangar because of wildfire of all reasons, which is comical, because it's a completely steel structure on a quite devoid of tree area. But just for this, like going, like, maybe it'll change and by the time we get to that point, but because I think the California wildfires really, that market was already, wildland had kind of put it down pretty low, and I think the California fires like nosedived at 100 feet underground. So just in a, I don't know what that looks like, but just be on our radar that the insurance is being difficult.
And that's a really good point. Insurance is impacting straight across the board all development. We met, part of the housing conference that Jackie and I went to, we heard from the fire marshal or chief, I'm not sure, from Vail and, and an insurance company. And it's getting excessively and increasingly difficult to be insured. It's also gonna bring up through our building code. Right now, we don't have sprinkler requirements, but in non-sprinkled buildings, residential, or, even non-combustible, it's getting incredibly hard to find insurance, which is gonna be a non-stopper on so many things. So it's really a time for us to be digging in and understanding the very deep impact that insurance acquisition is causing to homeowners. The cost of it, and in us not having adopted yet the WUI code or some iteration of it, not requiring sprinkling in homes, things that we haven't previously required through the building code. It's at least a time that we need to understand what that impact is. We have a lot of non-sprinkled occupancies throughout Lake County, and we don't have a wildland urban interface code that's been adopted. So discussions that are gonna be coming with your board of review, for your construction expert local partners to kind of dive into what that impact is, but it's equating to a real barrier around insurance. So we are the bearer of all good information today, I know.
It's been a heck of a morning in this room.
Yeah, we're doing great. So, but better to get proactive, find out how people are overcoming this in communities and what solutions are out there. So better to know what our vulnerabilities are and how, and what kind of solutions are out there. So we're out to find solutions. Did you wanna add anything, Jackie, or?
Yeah, no, we're just, the end of our session was all about, kind of the end of the world, it seemed like. It was, very depressing, for talk about the insurance and how they're gonna be canceling a lot of folks who won't even be eligible for insurance.
Around here.
And that's, I just whispered to that, one of the things that just popped in my head with this was our affordable housing project. And, whether the folks that be buying these units, what that cost is gonna be, if that's gonna be a barrier for some of them too. Because I don't know about y'all, but I know I got my renewal for this year and it went up substantially.
Also though, we did hear, and I don't know, Jackie, if this is, I think this is just a maybe that I heard this, and it's something we can explore, but I think that maybe perhaps working with Oakwood and Solution Builders, I believe that I heard that both Clayton and Berkshire Hathaway may have some insurance options for coverage in these difficult times, so I think we just need to explore that and make sure.
Yeah, that's something we hadn't, it was just brought up last week and we hadn't even, when we talk about affordability for these home buyers, it's really just how much is the mortgage gonna cost them? The taxes and insurance, it's to be determined, right?
Yeah.
And so it's a big concern. There've been a lot of claims with hail because climate change. So it's not just, it hasn't just been forest fires and although Colorado, I think we were 4th on the list of highest rates and most unaffordable insurance. So Texas, California, and I don't remember who the third one was who beat us. But it's not good.
Well, and they're seeing in the last 10 years an increase of most fires occurring above 8,000 feet. So it wasn't great, exciting information, but better to know what's out there.
Well, it's an absolute to anticipate that and look at it in terms of going forward with the affordable, because the one issue is when you buy a house, you have to essentially provide the lender with a quote as to insurance, and then that goes into a calculation of what their escrows are gonna have to be on top of the mortgage stuff. And so that, I'd hate for us to get to a point where we get to that final point, almost closing on these units, and all of a sudden they can't qualify because of the insurance.
And they can't get the lending, because the bank wants to make sure they're gonna get theirs.
So definitely a time that we're gonna have to start diving in to what are those insurance options. if we can find them and if they exist, and how do we mitigate that impact?
What was going on with the state legislation about insurance flexibility?
They're trying to do a state-based program, I think, to help make it more accessible and affordable for homeowners.
And also transparency around like what drives your,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so people know.
you have mitigation efforts.
Did
Right.
that open up the door for people who had like done extra fire mitigation
And that's
work
what-
and
yeah.
different things to qualify for insurance they might not have?
Well, and if we can get neighborhoods, there's a greater degree of obviously comfort from underwriters on policies if we could, and so another like tactic could be using our wildfire mitigation plan and incentivizing neighborhoods. I mean, the incentive is there, right? They have their vested, obviously probably one of the biggest investments that anyone owns is their home. And so working with neighborhoods to become fire wise neighborhoods, it's one thing to do your own mitigation within your your property lines. But if we could carve out opportunities to educate and inform, and I know like this is something we would only partner on, there's gonna be the upcoming meeting at the fire station. And so working with our partners on this, of how do we work with and reach neighborhoods to start doing neighborhood wide efforts, because that at least at first glance would have an overall benefit to all the homeowners in that area. No, just for protection and safety, but also hopefully in being recognized in a different category for insurance providers.
Also, based on like the mitigation guidelines, like the defensible space is supposed to be like 50 feet. And like I live on a half an acre and I can get 50 feet to the front and the back, but I can't get 50 feet to the sides. So in those neighborhood types where you have smaller than a half an acre or even 3/4 of an acre now, you can't do the required mitigation to qualify for wildfire, like for the insurance company to give you the blessing. So I think the neighborhood piece is like, cause unless all of my neighbors join in, we can do that by defending the area outside of the perimeter of the neighborhood, then those buildings are protected. So I think that's a good point. Cause that you just can't do it if you have that small of a parcel.
Yeah, like what if
And
your
you
neighbors
can't,
are
my
like,
neighborhood, I can't cut down all my trees.
That's my neighbors, cause I did that last year, I did a mitigation analysis on my house, and they were like, you're great, cause I had done a lot around it, but that precise point, because of the property lines, it said, you've done great, but your neighbors are gonna be your issue.
Yes.
Because they are still so fully wooded
Yep.
that, and I went to one of my neighbors while they were building their house and said, hey, here's a report I got, thought you might wanna be aware of this, I will pay to do this mitigation. And they said no, because they didn't wanna look at my house. They wanted to have that there, and I was like, okay, so you can watch while both of our houses
I was
burn.
gonna say, there won't be any houses to look at if
So that's
you're
a
right.
challenge, the neighborhood part of it is a challenge.
I think there'll be some pressure from that subdivision that you're adjacent to.
But thank you.
Because I think there's a lot of like-minded
Yeah.
residents in your adjacent subdivision, so hopefully, but I think if we can realize the benefit throughout, a neighborhood, they may get less worried about, I mean, my goodness, we've got a lot of beautiful view sheds, and so, what's more important? I think maybe having those, and bringing in some really good informed data to understand how vulnerable we are as a community. So
I think
it's just an
basically-
education maybe.
Yeah, just an education piece too. I mean, the stuff you can do is like, big ones are gutters. Gutters are always a hot ticket.
Fence.
Yeah, vents, non-metal roofs, fences and fencing attaching. So I was thinking about that today. I was like, maybe we just require that the 10 feet attached to the house has to be like metal. Like maybe, or that's some idea that to help with that, cause your fence will burn and then light your house on fire.
So some of those
Wow, like a
things
little fuse,
Yeah,
it slowly gets closer to your house.
some of those things will be addressed in the WUI code, because that talks directly to building materials. And it's something that when we did the adoption, we looked at, but again, the decision was not to make sprinkling mandatory at the time, nor to do the WUI code yet, although the WUI code wasn't quite ready because we didn't have our boundary established, that the boundary got established through the wildfire mitigation plan. So it was just a little premature because we didn't have that yet, we didn't have the boundary to adopt that the WUI would apply to, but now we have that. And so it's a really good time to lift these all up as, a collective impact kind of approach, but could really be mitigated through some consideration perhaps through the building code. But that will eventually come to you for consideration. Okay, let's keep moving. We got into fire mitigation. Okay. Implement a climate closure economic plan led by Lake County government, integrated into annual budget and informed by Climax, and lead community-wide collaboration on economic development initiatives. And I'm gonna just hit on just a couple of things, or one maybe minor thing here, and then turn it over to Adam, because I'm sure he'd really like to talk about this one. And that is just that economic development, and I have a whole comprehensive plan slide for you, but we're online to be doing this community-wide collaboration. So I'll let you go ahead and talk about the plan that Ted has produced.
Sorry. Just a Shelley babe.
Yeah, as most of you probably know, we did put together the initial draft of the Lake County Government Tourism and Economic Development plan, and it identifies 10 key things with sort of priorities and KPIs and things like that. And in that document, it's made very clear that that project or that planning document, that living document, will respond to all of the input and all the information and all of the comprehensive work that's being done with the One Community project, because ultimately, that will lay the foundation for the direction that we need to go, and in terms of priorities, and then also working with the BOCC's priorities, the memo that was sent out. So in addition, the only other thing I want to mention is just that I've had these conversations with Tim and with Lauren, and not yet with Candace. I think she's maybe a little busy. I don't know, maybe potentially. But yeah, basically at the end of the day, Ted is going to work with county management, and we've discussed this need for the long-term budgeting and forecasting of what our budget could and would look like based on mine closures, and that will help inform sort of what resources are available from the Lake County government's perspective in order to be able to focus on long-term economic development planning within Lake County government. And I have said it before, and I will say it again, that I'm all about Lake County government and Ted and CPD and others helping to lead what this implementation plan looks like, the mining closure plan. But a larger conversation should be had at that point around exactly how we bring that plan to life, in terms of what does my department look like, and staffing would be a huge consideration, because currently right now the Ted department is set up with one director whose job title, according to his job responsibilities, is 75% tourism and 25% economic development. And I can tell you pretty confidently that I'm spending way more than 25% of my time now focused on economic development. So as we get into a plan like this, that would become much, that would be a different ratio. And so that's a larger conversation to be had with the BOCC and county management when appropriate.
Moving on, and also gonna give this to Adam to, just gonna throw in CPD's perspective. Action to date, I think there were obviously notable benefits and challenges associated with ski touring weekend. And so what we added on here was just a sustainability review as we encourage more visitation to Lake County, just understanding the impact and vulnerabilities and the sustainability of that would just be one aspect. It'll be something again that we look at through the comp plan, but we would just want to make sure that that's included in the lanes.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, as an example, this year for ski touring, they doubled the amount of porta potties from 3 to 6. And I think we can all understand that
Wow.
6 porta potties for 12,500 people on Saturday is not enough.
Yeah, that was a nightmare.
So that's a really good example of it's a really good example of one of the many things that we should work with our partners. If any one of you wanna go have that conversation with Duffy, feel free, I did, and it was met with resistance, one might say.
Wouldn't we talk to the city about that? For them to require it in the permitting thing, we don't even have to talk to Duffy about it.
And it is required, but that doesn't change the facts.
So I think what was calculated probably under the permit was how many people that were participating in the event. And they didn't anticipate, and now obviously that, that's spectators, so our permits acts for estimation of spectators, staff, and participants.
So just an example of something that needs to be considered and looked at with all of our partners. Yeah, so we have created, we worked with the Colorado Tourism Office, received a grant, and we did a bunch of testing on things like ski touring and things like partnering with Ski Cooper, and saw some really magnificent results in terms of how we will be promoting our winter assets and amenities, and we're currently working on partnerships with Copper as well as with Chaffey County to create a little bit more of a regional winter attraction approach. And those conversations have been awesome, and we're looking forward to rolling those out with our new website for winter of 25-26. Our website will actually change seasonally now, so we'll have like a winter website and a summer website, which should allow us to also have a little bit more targeted access to being able to promote winter. And then we are working with TED Pros, I wrote CPD, but it's Pros, TED Pros and Public Works on a long-term plan for the Middle Belt Trail, including winter operations and more consistent grooming. And that will allow us to lean more heavily into the assets that we do have to promote. Again, the Nordic skiing, fat biking, and wow, I really went too fast on this. I wrote Nordic skiing again, but I meant alpine skiing at Ski Cooper and Copper. And then I was able to provide some feedback on the MVP, which is exciting. Looking at the MVP is exciting. Obviously I have some thoughts and comments about their interpretation of the benefit of summer programming, of summer operation, in terms of their thoughts on mountain biking, specifically given the popularity and sort of the prominence of mountain bike culture in our community based on the Leadville 100.
From my understanding, those lifts can't do mountain bikes.
The fixed grip won't be able to, but again, that's not an issue. I think that there are many examples of places where if you create easy access fire roads and a trail system, you can charge for that. Again, you can't charge $40 or $60 a day, but you can charge $20 a day, and you will 100% have concessions and have access to an amenity, whereas something like disc golf, you're not actually gonna see any rate of return on that, but again, it's a good first step, and I'll just keep bringing it up until Matt doesn't say no anymore.
I didn't see.
Who's that? Oh, this map?
Yeah.
That didn't say that.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, you did. I presented summer operations.
Yeah, but we weren't making decisions,
I didn't
right?
say no, I was just wondering if it would work.
Oh, okay, alright. Yeah, that's it.
Halfway
Did you talk to them about that at all, or has it
There's a lot of,
pushback?
no, it's more just, there was actually like a lot of logical reasons why it wasn't,
Oh,
why it wasn't super feasible, things with biking specifically, but options were open on like maybe music events, things like of that nature, but the biking was a tough one.
The only other thing I will offer on the biking, if you did actually want to consider live serve, which again, you do not need to consider live serve, is palmas, so anything with a dish, right? Retrofitted, it's literally just taking those and putting the front handlebar attachment, and you sit on the bike and you go up.
Sick.
And that
That sounds sketchy
I
as
want that so bad.
that
Sounds like a jury of the day.
yeah, that's a pretty common thing. There's a lot of examples of that
oh,
throughout.
I'd like to see
It'd be
that.
pretty hard for kids, so.
But yeah, again, it's like the kids should be earning their turns and biking up there, but there is that option. But again, I fully am in support of fixed grip as the way to go from a CapEx as well as a maintenance.
Yeah, there's no way we're gonna see it detachable up there in the next decade.
Totally.
So, moving on, and, Michael, I don't know, if you wanna jump on, this is, pretty much your slide, I know that the board is, well versed on the public transit, program, but, Michael, did you want to take this slide? If not, I can read your notes. Okay, so I think that you're all very aware, based on Elsa's presentation at the State of the Community. But action is just discussing steps to get more grants and future funding through CDOT, and looking at ways to make the transit sustainable. So attending monthly transit meetings to get information on programs available and what may be coming up or being cut for funding. So Michael definitely has his ear to the ground in looking at ways to support making the transit a more sustainable transportation program locally. And I do think encouraging ridership and maybe expansion probably has to be based on funding, so. But I think that ridership is something, and Elsa, you may even be able to update this a little better than I.
Like how much ridership?
Or
Well,
just
if we, the
like
more we
maybe-
use it, the less likely we'll lose it.
Okay,
And it's that we have to be able to prove that it's of value to our community to be able to be considered for future grant funding. And then also I think for the BOCC, like if we run out of grant funding, if we're not using it, anybody sitting at our table in this position won't have justification to continue to support it.
so I have to say that personally, as a community member, I'm excited, I'm seeing the transit everywhere through my daily interactions with that throughout the community, and so I'm sure that between the members of economic development or the community development team, I'm sure that we can think tank on ways to market, and I know that Adam has been very active in looking at opportunities to incentivize ridership and even diversification of ridership and different opportunities around that, so.
We also had a great call with Summit Stage with Commissioner Bullock and Public Works yesterday about trying to get another bus hopefully to Copper on the weekends, but also better aligning those times with our local transit. And then also when you all are meeting with Chaffey County commissioners, they wanna talk about regional transit from Lake County to Chaffey. So there's a lot of growth and opportunity here.
And the only other thing I would mention too is that when I met with Sammy and Stewart on Public Works to talk about what else would be presenting on at the State of the Community. Stuart had some really good, he has a lot of pretty robust background in transportation, and he had some really good insights and thoughts about things like trying to coordinate better for commuters, and then also just ways that we could potentially bring the costs down on providing the service. So
That's extraordinary, that's great.
Yeah, that's.
And Stuart's gonna work on trying to time the local transit with the Summit Stage, which had over 37,000 rides last year to and from Lake County.
Wow.
Just to be clear, my vision is to have that ski bus every day. I mean, I think he said easy weekends, but something that shows up at like 8:30. I might even take it, considering the parking at Copper. You gotta get on a bus and walk.
Yeah.
It just drops you at the front door. I park at the Family Dollar and jump on the bus.
Heck yeah.
Pick up a Coke at the Family Dollar.
A few drinks and then ride the bus home.
Stores right across the street.
Recreation, so I'm gonna turn this one over to Duncan, because this is definitely nothing I worked on at all.
So, Recreation Advisory Committee, so I've met with the chair to talk about buy-in around the redevelopment of the scope of the Recreation Advisory Committee, or board, I think it's actually Recreation Advisory Board, to encompass more than just recreation. We've had 2 meetings of the RAD this year, haven't had a quorum either. It's difficult when there's only actually 2 members.
Right.
So neither were official meetings, more just a discussion really. So ongoing work, I'm gonna work with Chris around how do we work this process, right? To my knowledge, Lake County hasn't actually reviewed any of its committees, it hasn't had an actual official process to do that. So let's get one. We'll talk around that. We'll draft a scope of the revised board, and we'll probably look at some sort of work session with you guys, and Matt Lane was the chair, just to get his input, because he's been here longer than I have. He's about to turn out of this committee, so his term is.
So be down to one.
Yeah, the one, yeah.
Which is Jane, right?
No, she's not on it, no, it's,
That was Jane Harrelson.
no, she's not, never been on it, or might have been on it,
She just shows up.
yeah, just shows up and says her piece.
Oh, she's.
The other member, name escapes me, doesn't, he hasn't been here for a couple of sessions anyway, for various reasons. Yeah, so that's the general plan of attack. Any questions on that?
Do we have any interest from community members about joining
That's
the?
the hard bit, isn't it, right? So, no, would be my take, so it's currently set up to be a board of 7.
Have you engaged with the communications department here about getting the word out that we're looking for people to
Yeah,
participate?
my understanding has happened, and they just haven't had the interest previously. I guess my
They, like
take,
the community or the communications department?
no, the community. My take would be, let's rescope it, increase its responsibilities, I guess, and then we'll see what we get. Maybe we actually scope it down to have less people on it. If that's gonna be a challenge to get 7, yeah, what's appropriate? There's various models around other counties, so we can do some learning from them. And again, ultimately, if there isn't a community interest to support it, maybe it disappears.
Sorry.
That'll be a discussion.
Can I ask a question? Is it statutorily required because of the CTF funds?
Not that I know of, but
Because again,
That issue.
yeah.
because that would be the only, I know that was the reason for having it was because we were bringing in lottery funds, so then there need to be some sort of oversight as to how they were spent, but I'm not sure.
Cool. Trail grooming, action sports, we've talked a lot about this. We've already had one session on the winter grooming. Adam alluded to, we'll also kind of come back to you with some options in June of what they could look like. Within my team, we're talking around developing options for change in our types of programming. How do we pivot to deliver some of those types of programs? What does that look like? We are also undergoing a reorganisation and a rebranding process is starting. That will address some of those questions.
How's that going so far?
We're getting there. We've had a bit of a rethink of approach. So, yeah.
The 29th, I can't remember, I think on the 29th I'll be presenting kind of next steps, how we're gonna lay it out, and so far it has pretty good buy-in from the deputies about this new change of how we're gonna figure out what that reorg and rebrand looks like.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Cool. In terms of things like community field, again, we'll have a discussion with Chris around changing that dynamic of the agreement. So rather than being an intergovernmental agreement, we look at a joint use agreement for our joint facilities, how we use them, what the process is, who maintains it, how we maintain it, etc., etc., etc. So that's ongoing. Any questions there? Cool. Again, we've talked Ski Cooper, obviously we're reviewing the MDP. We're going to potentially talk around options, releases, and how we build a program of activities utilising Ski Cooper, which is more integrated with goal and our rec department, what that looks like, what their role is, how we utilise Ski Cooper better. Dutch Henry, obviously involved in the planning with CMC around redevelopment of the parcel. Previous county manager, pro CPD, Public Works, were all actively involved in that project. I don't know if you want to talk to this too.
Sure, there is an entitlement process that will have to be reviewed there. That parcel was rezoned commercial industrial. Again, something that we discovered that it didn't make it onto the existing zoning map, but going through archived history and trying to catch any rezones that have not been captured, we discovered that. So we will work through, once the project has a more solid concept, what that entitlement process will be. Most likely it will be a conditional use permit, we believe, but we haven't really wrapped our heads around it yet. And so we will be working with them. At a minimum, it'll be a site plan review.
Would this align with the unspent funds from the gold grant that has been discovered?
I think that is more, potentially, but it's more programming orientated, that money.
Not infrastructure improvements.
Yeah, I'd have to have a conversation with Go Code, but possibly, or there might be other pools of money that we can apply for that planning piece.
Okay.
Certainly in terms of, if this gets developed, a lot of our thinking is here, how do we program this space? Can it become a sort of a learn to ski hill, for lack of better words, and we run programs for school kids and whoever else at this facility, real basic learning to ski.
It was a much larger vision than just a learn to ski area.
Yeah.
The all inclusive included more than just a beginner hill.
Yeah. So again, we'll work through that.
Cross that bridge when we get there, it's pretty far out.
The pool, rec centre, so we're still coming to the end of our feasibility study. As we said, the current design includes full-lane lake pool, leisure pool, spa pool, sauna, 2-court basketball gymnasium, 2 group exercise rooms, free weights cardio area, child watch area, and an admin office. We're currently working on an operation and programming model of how we fill that space and the likely costs of and revenue streams associated with that. So that will further clarify the ongoing operational costs.
So we'll get our final report from OLC at the end of May. They're gonna do a 2-hour presentation to the board on their findings, the costs, what's in the plan, etc. May 27th. I, as well as Commissioner Elsa and Duncan, have been meeting as a group with the city, school district, some after-school programmings like Project Dream, etc. About just recreation in general in our community, both indoor, outdoor, just like shared space to recreate outside of like programming. And PB Swims have started to join that as well. They are very strong in wanting LCIS as an option and not moving forward with any type of a new build. And so we've decided that the school district, the county, and the city should all meet in a joint work session. We're trying to do June 10th, right after the final report has come out. We can reschedule around the timing.
I'll just be remote on most of June.
Okay. To talk about like what is the best path forward, what needs to happen. There's MOUs in place currently between the county and the school district. The city has money dedicated for things, but the school district has a building. And also everyone's priorities are a little bit different right now given the environment we're in. So it'll be a joint, very public conversation about what is the best next path forward. Very strong opinions in our community.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I still think, a while ago we'd asked to see all the actual hard data about what was wrong with LCIS. And I'm still a little curious about, the studies that were done and, so I finally just got most of it in its raw form, but it's like 260 something pages, so I gotta start digging into that and see if I can make heads or tails, or see if there's someone who can help me make sense of 260 something pages of LCIS information.
We have started, Duncan and I have spent a lot of time with PB Swims and trying to do a side-by-side of LCIS option versus a new build option. They are little apples to oranges, right? This recreation center is much different than just a pool. So we're doing our best to say like, if you wanted this is how much it would cost, how long the construction time would be, yada yada, and then on this option, this is what you would get. So we have that. We have done some initial review when the county was considering LCIS about taking over the entire building and what that would cost.
I could get a BOCC room.
Huh?
The library.
We'd get a new BOCC room.
You'd also get a couple decades of deferred maintenance.
Oh, yeah.
But anyways, that's not for today, but just FYI that we've been working pretty closely with them and our other partners on this, so.
Cool.
Expand off-highway vehicle recreation opportunities. And so I just threw on here a little bit of clarification perhaps, that the OHV ordinance made minor modifications to the private use. It was really designed to really come in with a stronger hand on commercial. And so really the only changes to that point A to point B kind of idea of being able to use your personal OHV, is just that you are truly using it for a recreational destination, and you're not using it to go to the grocery store or the post office or the many other uses that we see, or occasionally parked out in front of the courthouse to come in and see the court recorder. So it was just, that was really the only change as far as non-commercial use. Let's see, and one of the lingering things out of the OHV, and we are scheduled to have obviously a work session on this to just kind of dive into all the mechanics of it. But the ongoing work was a sticker program for a local registration, some funding mechanism to maybe help with grooming, different access, road maintenance, things like that, and then a youth education program. You know, one of the biggest pain points that we heard from the community through all of this is a real concern, and just yesterday, I saw 3 kids on an OHV blowing through the stop sign on McQuiffy, right in front of me, and no helmets, no gear, no anything. So I think that we've all seen those times within that group too. They know that obviously for life safety, law enforcement are not gonna chase kids on OHVs. And so unfortunately, if we could just make a little bit of a culture change around that and add some opportunity to really educate and support our youth. And so obviously PROS has a lot on their plate right now, but that was hopefully an eventual outcome, is that we could find some youth programming around OHV with our amazing motocross asset, and maybe some educational opportunities for local youth. And so ongoing work is really dialing in these commercial recreation roadway permits that keep CC up at night in our department, and pulling out her hair. And so we really wanna kind of talk to the board in that work session about some of our pain points around those. And just, we really wanna go through the ordinance, the permit process, and the administrative oversight on that. So that is upcoming in a work session with the board, and don't know if anybody else has anything on that. I think so, we've been kind of the lead. There you go, Duncan.
Yeah, again, part of our restructure is looking at a bit of a programming matrix. What are we doing? When are we doing it? Who are we doing it with? So this will be considered as part of our restructure as well.
And you said we have a work session on this coming up?
Yeah, it'll just be a brief check-in to let you know status update.
Cool.
Before I get into infrastructure, there is one slide that either I just went flying over, or and I just wanna highlight. I know we are really concentrating on the board's priorities with this presentation, but I just wanted to put in a plug. I know you've heard me talk about the comp plan umpteen times, but I just want to kind of dive into what are we statutorily required to include in our comp plan, and what are the other areas that we're really gonna dive into. And I think one of the other things that you will hear from your planning department is maybe a suggestion of thinking about maybe the benefit of getting through the comprehensive plan in some of the priority and implementation of some of these priorities. So I'm really looking at the comp plan as your policy framework that, you know, all your regulations live from and are created from. And so statutorily, I wrote them all down so I wouldn't forget any. Statutorily, we're required now, this is a new addition, to have a housing action plan, to recreation, tourism, strategic growth plan, a 3-mile plan because we're working in conjunction with the city, a water supply element. And that water supply element has to have a look for no less than a 5-year basis. And then in addition, the things that we're gonna be diving into is transportation, land use, economic development, affordable housing, natural and cultural resources, capital improvements, efficiency in government, water supply and conservation, sustainability, parks and open space, environment and energy. So I just also wanted to throw into the mix, like, we're gonna be coming with all of these topical discussions, bringing in a lot of informed information to help really carve out the future. And so I think at some point, just letting that sit with you a bit and just thinking about the benefit of having that plan complete and those strategies refined, because they may really help with priorities and implementation eventually. So moving on, infrastructure. Michael,
I'm here.
Okay, I'll let you go ahead and present this.
Okay, so the first one is to enhance the paving plan and improve road maintenance. we have updated the 5-year plan map, that I showed you guys before. And we did update with some other areas that we're looking at doing, not very much though, because of the next thing, which is financing. We still haven't figured out exactly how much we can spend. And then, the ongoing work is to figure out more ways for funding options. Transportation grants, which I did go to the IMTPR last Friday, and unfortunately, the grants that they gave out in February, the state of Colorado retracted. Even though those are only for like CDOT grants anyway. And possibly restarting the road and bridge fund tax, which is a statute tax that you could do. That is property tax though. And the other option is maybe putting something out there for a sales tax for roads. I know a lot of other jurisdictions are doing that to help fix their roads.
And Michael, just a couple things. I don't know if you would consider these maybe benefits. We do have the Slag Project CUP that's here in town. They are really anxious to provide any type of public benefit that they might. As you may remember, they voluntarily gave $1 per ton to the bypass road, but they're also eager to have conversations if their aggregate would. They probably really like to have an opportunity to talk about the durability of it, at least with Michael, and anxious to participate in any kind of local solutions for material. And then, Michael, you might, I know that your APN was approved at the gravel pit at the airport to do quite a bit of production that might be an additional benefit beyond our needs.
Right. The only problem with that is the current pits that the county owns help keep the county self-sufficient, so we don't have to buy stuff. I did the material that you're talking about, the slag over there across the road from the pit, our pit, is very nice stuff when you're doing chip sealing because it stays black. It looks like a brand new road. I mean, even 10 years later, because we have used some of that in the past. On County Road 11, and half of it looks really good, like it was just laid yesterday, and the other half is all worn out because it was just regular chip rock, so the oil's gone off of that, and it wasn't black when it went down, so it's changed to gray. Other than that, I'm open to anything that anybody has, can help in the county. Like I said, we're working also on getting our hot plant operational. The contractor that was trying to get the job in Twin Lakes this year did not get it, and they're working with ACA. The new contractor is already working with ACA to crush and make asphalt. I plan on approaching them to see if we can purchase asphalt from them anyways at a cheaper price, or at least it'll save us time, travel time to go to BV to pick up material. But those are things I'm working on right now.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, Michael. Can you share the 5-year plan with us, the updated version?
I don't have the map that I can share right away, but it is on the website, I believe.
Okay. We can direct people to that. We get a lot of emails about the roads.
Yeah, Lauren, do you know where it is on the website? I've looked for it and I can't find
The
it.
pavement plan?
Yeah,
It's kind of hard to read if you are reading it, but I will send it to you.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think it's underneath Road and Bridge.
Is it?
I dug around in there, like I didn't find it, but I might have not looked hard enough, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I can get it for you.
All right, oversee courthouse renovation efforts to ensure timely and effective improvements. So, thanks to Michael, he was able to find, the historic survey with the evidence of the vacated alley and, those conceptual first plans, as you know, represented to the BOCC by the architectural firm. and MWL. And then, just so that you all know, a meeting was held between Dynamic, the first concept architect, and the building department to provide technical assistance regarding the existing building code addition that we've adopted, just to look at ways that the existing building code could create effective savings through the renovation process. And I think that the ongoing work, I put this in for Michael, so but I think that he's providing the facility knowledge and expertise of the existing systems to help direct that work. And then CPD has provided access to preliminary code review throughout the project by Shubes Coda. So Steve Thomas from Shubes Coda, who teaches nationally, we've plugged him in. This was approved by previous county manager to go ahead, and we believe that his time would be well spent for the cost savings of the project. So the time spent with a code professional to really navigate with the architects as they try to do a more complicated review could already, in that initial conversation, utilizing the existing building codes, there was ways to effectively constitute cost savings because of things like ADA accessibility and 20% throughout the building versus having to establish thresholds that exceed that is just like one example of ways that there are, mechanisms that the county could utilize, and I'm sure that those options would be brought forward because we have adopted the existing building code. So we just wanted to be supportive in all the departments of ways that we could help with the timely and effective aspect of that. And Michael, did you have anything else?
No, I think everything looked good there.
Okay, great. This is one that I should probably not have made a slide on. I don't know who's,
I'll
I think,
update you as we hear
I
more.
think you'll update us,
Yeah,
so we'll
we
move on.
gotta find the 5th member of the advisory board.
Okay.
It's kinda the next step.
And I'm going to.
I've got names, but see if they, I'll put them at the wall till they stick.
I'm not sure who filled this one in.
Me.
Okay.
So, as we've talked about, PB Swims are leading some piece of work on automobiles. We're part of an ongoing working group, and that's the shared vision of the working group. I guess some of my comments would be, how do we identify what the actual investment options are to meet that vision, not necessarily replace the hope from PB Swim's vision, if that makes sense. So we'll continue to work through that. Again, information overload is a thing, so as you alluded to, 235-page document.
It's bigger than that, right? It's like 280 something, 268.
Yeah, there's a lot of information on that. A lot of technical expertise. And again, there's been obviously various cost estimates to update the pool, which last was 2023. So again, how does that piece of work get updated as well? Yeah.
Is the consultant that's working on the indoor rec plan, are they helping and assisting with the review of the LCIS review? Oh, I just didn't know.
You know?
Warren?
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, no, it's fair, there's no
I
like.
don't actually know what it stands for, to be honest.
Oh, no, I'm talking about.
I think it's
As the consultant was looking at the rec center, reviewed PB Swim's 286 pages of
I don't think it actually stands
So
for.
that you
I wanna
have
know
somebody
why
to
there's so much he said there, and I can't figure that out until I make heads or tails of that.
So you can kind of dive
That's
into
what they're trying to do, is create the, not he said, she said, but this is what it says and this is what it says.
Yeah, they're just
So
both
trying-
paid for studies that contradict each other. So that's kind of where, how do we get to the bottom of that?
Yeah, we try to cite things that have been stated, like, oh, it's gonna take 6 months to renovate the pool at LCIS. And so we've gone through the documents and decided where it says maybe something different, so you can look at like page and find exactly what report says what, so it's not just people saying X, Y, Z.
Yeah. And again, my experience tells me that the more reports you have, the more conflicting information you can get.
Yeah.
Because of people's opinions, right?
So we get a report on all the reports?
Basically.
Yeah, that's like exactly what needs to happen, thank you, Matt.
You're a consultant.
A consultant that consults the consulting. Sorry. I know it's not fun for you guys, but it's about to be not as much fun for us, is it? Chris?
Right.
Yeah.
Increased financial support of infrastructure projects, so just a heads up that through a collaborative effort of Public Works and CPD and with Catherine's help, we applied for the Enterprise Fund grant through hazard mitigation for a community-wide stormwater drainage plan. But unfortunately, we were not awarded, but we've got some really great feedback so that we can look at round 2 if the grant subcommittee would approve us to apply for that, but there is no match associated with this, so that's pretty exciting. And this funding comes from insurance policies that are required, so this is a really stable pot of money in order for us to look at. But for the success of a paving plan, really laying good drainage plans are essential.
Yeah.
So we're hopeful to do that. Catherine's going to be Public Works and CBP on a weekly basis, interface to talk about overlapping priorities. And Catherine's going to be joining us, and she's actively looking for other opportunities that might be out there. We've also been in conversations with the city. The city put some money aside of ARPA to look at stormwater as well. And so we're really looking at a collaborative approach, obviously, to a community-wide approach to this. Michael's team has some ideas for a potential short-term, maybe management plan for the 12th Street drainage and the impact to West Park and County Road 4 and McQuaffey and the cemetery. So that flooding incident that we had. And obviously there's been a lot of impervious surface added. There's also a pain point with the development of the rail yards and the, shall we say, ineffectiveness of their detention areas. So we're actively looking for solutions and funding opportunities, and so that's one big place that we're trying to find funding for. Also, just reiterating for everyone, letting them know we had another meeting with EPS, Economic and Planning Systems, who is doing our impact fee study, or we are going to probably be terming it more infrastructure funding. And this didn't get updated. The results are actually due by the last quarter of the year. But they are going to be doing an on-site visit where we're gonna go through and look at all of the development that's happening and just get a greater understanding with the consultant. We're also hoping to bring them to our community development team meeting so they can meet with all of the different department heads around emergency management, infrastructure, what are our local needs for funding, and get a deeper understanding of what that is. So that's set in June. And so our ongoing work is the completion of the EPS study to better inform funding mechanisms around infrastructure. And also, obviously, this will be a key topical area of review for the comp plan and coming up with strategies and ways to support our local critical infrastructure needs. And wow, good job. Congratulations. So, any questions?
Sounds like the road paving's we're still in the same spot we were, several months ago.
Without
No
the
real plan.
drainage is the issue, we can't pave the roads, and especially it's like I think the West Park's a good analogy for kind of what's going on with the rest of town. There's so much stuff that needs to be fixed under the roads.
Yeah.
We can't, but I still feel like we could be laying the groundwork with things like the hot plant and putting Public Works into a better position so that when we're ready, we can move ahead at a better pace, supplying more of our own supplies, but it's always hard to put anything on my radar after listening to DHS and the struggles there, because it just throws everything else.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. I need to hear it, you know, cause it's, I've said I wouldn't say it too much out loud, but people over potholes. And it's just an unfortunate truth.
I would mention too, that this only really shows a percentage of what all of our departments are really involved in and doing. There are a lot of other projects and strategies underway to address just a whole host of other things that are happening. And so, we'll be looking forward to an opportunity to just kind of highlight that, I think, back to the board too, because we just really, at least my presentation, I really hit on just identifying the priorities that you're looking at initially, through all our different departments, but I do know that the depth and breadth of what all of the departments are doing really isn't represented in all of this.
Yeah,
It's just kind of a small percentage.
Weeks to go through that.
Yeah, so, we just kind of hit very specific to your priorities.
And there are more projects that are across departments, right? It takes one or more really to do it, so that's why we set up these teams.
Yeah.
Because so much of our work is interconnected.
Absolutely.
It's awesome, I love this kind of presentation.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Amy.
Thanks.
Alright, well, it's 12:17, we'll conclude this morning's work session with the Lake County Board of County Commissioners. Thanks again, everybody.
Thank you.
I get so hung up in my tweet.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, there's the,
I just asked Liz to put that up on the, Road and Bridge landing page,
okay,
so,
'cause, yeah, I went in there and I couldn't find it.
okay, she's gonna put it up on this
Okay.
website, so it's easy, we can just send people to that website.
Alright. Stop share.
Escape.
And end, can end it down at the bottom.